Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it's the 18th day of December 2024. Welcome to our show today. Wow, do we have something cool coming out today? In this little paper right here, it's actually a report. I think that this is going to be some of the biggest news that's going to come out about the election rigging that's gone on and conflict of interest and cover up and the whole 10 yards of the year. No, I'm not kidding you. So today we're going to start out. I'm going to throw that out as a little teaser because get your friends to come and watch this. This is going to be amazing. So at 9 o'clock, we start out with Liberty Essentials with Bill, Ralph, and Karen. At 10 o'clock, it's Chadwick Moore, who is Tucker Carlson's biographer. I know Chadwick. He's a nice, very nice person. And he's got quite a story as a journalist. I very much like him. And then at 11 o'clock, Bob Cushman's going to be back on today. I absolutely love this guy too. You cannot believe how much research that he has done. And guess what? I think we've connected the dots to perhaps maybe some conflict of interest. And it's going to lead back to potentially Dana Nessel and her wife, as well as so many other people that were involved in this. So make sure you stay on until 11 o'clock, and we're going to go through the evidence, the connections, the dollars, and over a $1 million donation that was made through organizations they were heads of to who? The signature gatherers. All I can say is it sure looks like they rigged it right then and there. And we're going to get to the bottom of this. And Michigan's going to turn from a mitten into a boxing glove. And with that said, morning, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and throw something up on the screen here just because I want you guys to see this. And hang on for 1 second. I figured out how to do, oh yeah, that's right. I don't know if I can get the sound on from this because it's got to come through my microphone. I don't know why this doesn't work. Let me see. Let me see if I can get the sound to work here. They're definitely trying to hide this, but I can't get the sound working, so we're going to just go right into it. What do we want to talk about today? Do we want to talk about what happened with the Monday episode of Brandenburg News Network? Because I'm fairly disturbed about what I saw and heard. And this morning at 4 o'clock, I got up. We unlisted the episode, and I'll tell you why. I am so disgusted. Karen, you wrote some text last night. You could see it in my face. How absolutely disgusted I was with this. And I had a long discussion with everybody when we got offline and said, you know what? It really didn't look like you were here to blow the whistle on this cult, but that you were doing a commercial for it. And I was completely done when they made the jump to Matthew. I think it was in Matthew. I'm not even going to quote it because I don't want to bring. And basically said that Jesus is a pedophile. And I was done. I was completely done. The absolute apostasy of this, the blasphemy, the disgustingness of this was just horrific to me. And I'm going to say it right now. I talk to everyone. Everything comes out in Brandenburg News Network. They have the right to say whatever they want. And I also have the right to say what I want. And I'm going to absolutely and categorically denounce what happened on the show on Monday. And instead of laying this thing out and saying this is absolutely apostate and a lie, they got into all of the drug use of all of this, and then hung out with trying to say that that everything pretty much in the Bible was all about pedophilia, admitted to going and watching movies that were put in front of them. And I said right online, and I'm sure you saw it, Karen, I said online, like, any normal person would have looked at this and said, this is not okay. And how can you sit there and justify this? And how can people get sucked into this? We all know what's right and wrong. And so for somebody to sit there and justify that they sat through watching, young naked boys and saying that it without going into an absolute tizzy fit, burn it to the ground moment, I cannot understand this. And then the jump to the fact that this cult leader is justifying their action. This is what Satan does. Satan wants to absolutely twist every single thing out there. And my reaction to what they did with the scriptures to try to prove a point, their point, and justify the behavior should be horrifying to all of us. And so help me God, I will not stop talking about this because of what an absolutely in your face, misleading bunch of nonsense I think I've ever seen in my life.
You want my feedback?
Yes, I would, because when you went and watched it, and I need to make sure that link is killed too, because I don't even want anybody else to end up having to listen to this.
Yeah, I won't say how I watched it.
In defense of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and that's just the way it is. I'm going to read the post that I wrote, and I posted this morning on my Telegram channel. We're in a spiritual war. Jesus is the way. Without him leading us as a whole, and you, everyone out there, as an individual, it will result in the total lack of having a grip on reality while sinking into insanity. This includes the result of individuals being lost and subject to be preyed upon by demonic forces. And I'm telling you what, the demonic forces are out there kicking and screaming as they are watching the destruction of the satanic structure, which Satan himself, who is a loser, a liar, a cheat, has put in place. I took down the video on Monday because while the subject matter is important, pedophilia, grooming, and several forms of evil were not called out clearly as evil. Therefore, I have to question both the discernment and the wisdom of those involved. The intention may have been to destroy the credibility of the Ammon Hillman cult. I don't know, but I didn't see the evidence of that. However, it is my opinion that the presentation ended up being more of a commercial for the destruction of soul operations. I can't be quiet about this. Use discernment in all things. The insanity is over-the-top attack on the character of Jesus and was never clearly refuted. There were illogical jumps and assumptions made about Jesus, which at the core was pure manipulation and deception. Knowledge by itself is Satan's bait. He can and will twist everything to play to what you want to hear. He plays to what people want to hear to justify their positions on things and justifying sin. I cannot understand how adults can be sucked into participating in grooming and pedophilia. The grooming is in the movie, so be careful of the programming and desensitization. We know what is right and wrong. There is no excuse for participating in the destruction of innocence and preying upon it for some sick, twisted pursuit, including the pursuit to prop oneself up or to garner the acceptance of the in crowd. Any cult or group which operates within a cult type structure, which I'm going to throw it out there, the political parties do it, as well as many of the social groups out there. It is a cult structure. You have to be extraordinarily careful. I totally am disgusted by the entire deception surrounding Monday, and it's time for a spiritual palate cleansing. Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Jesus Christ is the only answer for this world that's deteriorating faster and faster. Your salvation is most important, and through Jesus Christ is the only way. John 14:6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Romans 10:9-10. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. 10. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. All glory goes to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. End of story. And I'm going to say that I am so disgusted by what I heard. I have no words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one thing about it is that there's a lot of people that doubt that this stuff exists. You know, you tell people about what's going on, and oh, you're just you're just imagining things. That kind of thing doesn't actually happen, and it definitely does.
They think it's a quaint story. It's not a quaint story. We're looking at the deception and the destruction of souls wholesale, without discussion, or without there's no discussion on this. When somebody has participated in a grooming effort or child porn or whatever, and they pretty much admitted to it, you have to sit there and go, guess what, guys? This is some sort of absolute demonic nonsense.
You know, and beyond common sense, because anybody can look at this, and it should be common sense to anybody that these things are absolutely wicked. They are absolutely in violation. They're an abomination in the eyes of God, right? Old Testament, New Testament, they both call such things out. And Christ specifically in Matthew, when he talks about those who would offend one of these little ones, it's better for a millstone to be hung about their neck than to be cast into the sea, right? That is proper judgment for individuals that push such agendas. But even more so than that, our laws condemn such action, right? And those that we put up in government positions, our elected servants, should be the ones who out in the forefront are the ones to bring forth judgment upon this, right? And beyond that, if they aren't going to do it, the people need to stand up and do such things. I've talked about this many times with some local representation, local units of government as well. And I've specifically told them, if this ever comes up in my community, in my area, and you don't bring it up, then we're going to band together and we're going to do something about it, because we're not going to tolerate it, right? Granted, I live kind of out in the sticks. You know, we're not too far away from the towns, but it doesn't matter. The people have to get up on this. You have to. I don't care if you believe it or not. Just do a little bit of reading, do a little bit of eyewitness testimony, and understand exactly what's going on, because it affects every level of government. It's the federal government that's pushing all of this, right? Your good old representation that doesn't happen in the federal level. They're the ones that are pushing this, and they're using your money. Let me reiterate that they're using your money to get this done. Every one of us that is paying into the federal government via any sort of taxation, it's your money that's funding all of this. So everybody is a partaker in this, and everybody needs to get up and start doing something about it, right? Number one, quit funding it. Number two, actually get out and be the voice against it. Number three, if you see it, handle it. As simple as that.
Well, that's what Donna was trying to do.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch Monday's show, so I don't, I'm kind of coming up on the backside of this, but I can only imagine the stuff that's being said, because we see it being said everywhere else too. And I would take it farther. It's not even apostasy at that point. They're revealing exactly who they are and who they serve, right? If they want to take it down that road, they never had any lot or matter with the Christ that they talk about, right? Whether good or bad, I don't know. I don't know who the individual was or exactly what was said, but they just revealed to everybody publicly who they are.
Well, as I was listening to this too, if you listen to some of it, it almost sounded a bit hypnotic, and the voice patterns did. So I'm pretty attuned to that sort of thing of listening to voice patterns. That's why I can say too that Ralph is too, that we study certain things, and that's one of them. We study the voice patterns, and as I was listening to them talk, I was like, this is absolutely a demonic cadence. It was almost a hypnotic cadence instead of a normal speaking voice. And so as I was listening to this, and more got revealed, and finally I couldn't stop it. And the horror on their faces, the one's face was just like, horrified for a minute, but it was, I don't know.
Well, I took a screenshot at one point. I backed it up and took a screenshot to contrast for you what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I came into it. I watched yesterday's show first, and then I started watching the next show. And I texted about how I had a problem getting to it, and you mentioned that it was taken down, but I was able to get in the other way. So I started watching, and that's how I found out that Donna had a problem with it. So I was going in with a more skeptical mind than usual. So I'm going to start with that. That's to be fair. So I was watching more than just listening to. I wanted to observe. There were two. One had a little icon like I have, and Ralph, the IT guy, so you couldn't see your face. The other one, I could see your face. And what I observed was some people have a way of smiling in a pattern that's not normal for the rest of us. You know, some people, when they get really uncomfortable, they just don't know what to do with their face, and they smile or they laugh.
Or you can see a demonic smile. There's demonic smiles where people know they're doing the wrong thing, and they'll sit there, and it's a demonic smile.
Yeah, so this was just, that's all I'm going to say is I don't have the life experience that Donna does. But I did notice that there was a smiling going on whenever she was talking about the experiences and the knowledge that she had gleaned from this manipulative man. And when Donna was expressing disgust, which she interrupted to do many, many times, there was a smile going on. And at one point, she covered her face, half her face, but her eyes were smiling. And Donna's face was completely the opposite. You were just rearing your head. Your lips were going up like you had just tasted something bad. Your eyes were squinting. Donna was expressing complete and utter horror and disgust. And this woman looked like she was trying to hide her smile. When things were a little calmer and you were talking about how you just didn't understand and you disagreed with what was going on, she was not smiling. When somebody else was talking, she wasn't smiling. But when she was talking about the brilliance of this man, how intelligent he was, well, I personally, so my perspective is a little different coming out of an organization where there was a brilliant man at the helm. I respect the brilliance, but I don't respect what was done with it. And I saw a woman who, regardless of the emotional reaction she may or may not be having after the fact, there is still a deep respect to the man for his intelligence level. But it seemed also that she was taken in still by what was taught. And when I've seen people on a program actually recently about David Koresh and the people who survived the incidents where the FBI had come and the people committed suicide largely. That man was very manipulative, and he was able to convince people to kill themselves. And also people were killed through the destruction of the event. Well, the people who survived it, you could tell some of them still were taken in by the man, even as they're talking about what terrible things had happened and the brainwashing and so on. And these two started out by saying, well, we're going to give a background, and he was lying about this and he was lying about that. But then you get to hear more about his
drug
lessons, his lessons and how he manipulated. But when I talk about someone else who manipulated me and others, even though I respect the intelligence and I don't respect what was done, you don't see me talking about it publicly. Now, it wasn't a cult, granted. I don't feel like I was in a cult. I was in a cult-like mentality situation. But the organization that exists, I just don't describe it as a cult. Maybe some others would disagree, but I'm not out there preaching and teaching the things in order to discredit it at the same time. And what they were doing, I thought, was they're actually teaching what he was teaching while saying, well, this is how crazy it was. But then smiling about, no, you're underhandedly, it's like you were saying, Satan is really good at saying, well, yes, we know the scripture, but the scripture is wrong because, and then cleverly manipulating the scripture to say, I mean, that's all they needed to say. This is a man that takes scripture and takes a word or a phrase out of context and completely changes the meaning. And he takes people who are vulnerable because of the abuse of their past by people in a quote unquote church congregation to manipulate their minds further and further traumatize them. That's all that they needed to say about how he taught or what he taught. He uses the intelligence that he has and the knowledge about history, science, medicine, and so on, and scripture to then manipulate people into thinking that their interpretation of the scripture in the past was incorrect. My interpretation of the scripture is right. Now let me tell you all the ways. They didn't need to tell us all the ways. The last 30 seconds of what I just said is all they needed to do, and then focus on how to avoid becoming a victim of this man. And when Chris came onto the show, Donna had been very, the disgust was coming out, and you kept saying, I disagree. And Chris focused on the victim mentality. And these two people may have been victims of the mentality, but what they were expressing to me was that they're still kind of locked in, at least to some degree, even if they're out there trying to downplay and disagree with the man and warn people about him. They're going about it in such a way that is not going to be effective. And so my discernment is saying, I don't want to listen to what they have to say because of the way they're doing it. Are they actually promoting him to those who are confused, who are then going to say, well, maybe I've been interpreting the scripture wrong. Maybe I need to look at what he has to say. No, you don't.
Right there.
Well, and that's specific to what it says. I mean, what does Satan appear as? He appears as an angel of light, right? And his ministers appear the same way. And when the scripture tells us to test the spirits to see whether they be of God, right? Because putting your trust in a man is going to bring a snare to you. When my wife worked in a bank vault, this was one of the things that they were taught when they were looking for counterfeit bills that would come through. They did not look and study how many different ways there was to counterfeit a bill because it's unlimited, right? They didn't study the counterfeits to try to point them out as they came across their hands, but rather what they did was they studied the real bills and they handled them. They learned them. They studied every physical aspect of it so that when something came through, I mean, you can ask my wife, when a counterfeit bill would come through, the moment her fingers touched it, there was something wrong about it. Right. And she was able to point it out. It's the same way it goes with scripture, with theology, with law. Right. You can apply it to every aspect of life. If you know what the truth is and you're so intertwined with it that when something false comes up, you're going to immediately have a red flag and you're going to look at it and say, oh, there's something off about this. So you need to look deeper at it to determine what was off about it. And when you do, you can immediately see that it's counterfeit and throw it away. Get rid of it, right? Yeah. Move back on. But we have so many people focusing on what is actually not true. They study all these different, especially in theology, they study all these different aspects of what some man is going to say or some man is going to interpret how this is being said. instead of actually just looking at it for what it is and learning it for what it is, and having the discernment from the Spirit to be able to say, yes, this is the truth of it. And they get tied up with all of this. I mean, the more and more you put in your head, the more that's going to retain there, and the more you're going to have to filter through, right? If we would just stick to what is true, all of this nonsense would be blatantly pointed out.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest issues we have, right?
The other thing, though, they said too, I don't want to interrupt your thought, is they kept mentioning these two movies over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see that is absolutely I'm not saying they're CIA ops, but what I am saying is that those in our government who are in intelligence or CIA or manipulators and such, they understand how human beings work, how we tick. And if they put something out there like that, people are going to go, well, yes, I want to find out what's in those movies. And they'll go look, because curiosity killed the cat. And that's what happens with people. They'll go look into it because they want to find out for themselves. Not going to tell you that it's any different than that. But why would they have mentioned that over and over again?
Yeah, by the name of it. They could have said, hey, he made people watch certain videos. That's all they needed to say. And what Bill was just saying too is put in simpler terms too. Another analogy is dog training. A lot of people want a protective dog. A dog that's going to protect their house in case they have an invader, right? Protect their children, protect their home, property. So what do we tell them? I was a dog trainer. What do we tell people who want a protective dog? Socialize that dog as much as possible in the first few months of life. The dog will learn what is normal. Normal. And when it comes across something that's abnormal, it will respond. That's all you have to do. People who want to train their dog to bark at strangers or something like that, they end up with a dog that is dangerous and out of their control. My dogs, they took them to a fairground at a music event. And this is years ago. Everything was fine. They were calm and relaxed. People were coming and going. We were camped right next to a gate. It wasn't until people stopped walking and stared at my dogs because they were curious about them that they barked, because that was the one thing that was not normal. It's like finding that bill that's not that dollar bill note that's not normal.
Bill, finish your thought,
you know what normal is, and that's, these people could have said, I was vulnerable and I was taken in, and this is how he did it, and I was confused about the scripture, but I learned at some point that I was wrong, and now I want to warn people about him. That would have been fine. But to tell people exactly what he was teaching is you're continuing the process.
They were teaching. And so that was my point too. Bill, finish your thought, please.
Well, it goes the same way. Why do we have such government corruption in here, and why do the people let it continue? It's the same principle, is that the majority of people have not even read their Constitution, have not even read the proper law or known the foundation of it, right? And if they don't understand what is supposed to happen, what is true regarding governments and how they're set up, then anything that comes along, they eventually get sucked into it and brainwashed over generations, because they're not correcting their children in it either, that are being publicly indoctrinated through the school system. And generations continue, and what one generation tolerates, the next generation will embrace, right? And then the next generation will accept. It's the same principle that goes along in theology, government, law, once again, every aspect of life. It all falls to the same thing, and that is the people don't know the truth. Hosea made it very clear when he was speaking to the Israelites, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, right? It's the same thing that's happening in America. It's the same thing that's happening in Michigan. And I'd like to take this to the legislature. I briefly mentioned that right before the show, Donna, but there was a huge issue that I saw that almost everybody is praising our Michigan legislature for. And I'm dumbfounded at the fact that they could do such thing. If we want to take it that way, but I want to finish the thought regarding your show Monday first before I do that.
Well, I think one thing too, like I said, there's a lot of people that don't think this kind of thing happens, and it very much is out there, and that was definite evidence of that. But this kind of thing too it's nothing new. This has been the same strategy that has been used by Satan for millennia at this point. You read through the Old Testament and look what they did for Asherah worship and how pervasive, repeatedly pervasive, that kept being in society. And one, look through Kings and Chronicles. One king would destroy it and rebuild parts of the temple, and then the next king would embrace it, and it would go back and forth. And it was a major problem. And a lot of the things that we see now with this sort of thing are very similar to what the Bible describes about how Asherah worship worked.
Yeah, well, and remember, I will talk to anyone, and we will, and I'll give anyone a chance to tell their story. But if I see something that is absolutely insane, insanely wrong,
satanic,
I am going to put this out there. And when Chris came on, to your point, Karen, when Chris came on and he was like, oh, you guys are victims of this, and he was softening the blow a little bit, and I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, my disgust on this is so great that I can't even, I won't even negotiate with this, right? We just had, and he didn't listen to the point where they admitted to watching these videos. Right. So they were watching child porn. They admitted to it.
Yeah.
And so he was like, you're victims of a very evil person. That is nonsense. All right. We know what's right and what's wrong. If people want to go ahead and I'll get it. There's some really evil people out there, and they prey upon people in their most weakest state. I get that. However, to soft serve this up instead of saying, you do realize you walked right into this, and at a base level, we all know what's right and wrong, and we're responsible for our choices. So when you find out that something's wrong, you're obligated to not only write that, but to tell everyone clearly in no uncertain terms what was wrong to save other people, instead of, I don't know, it wasn't clear. And I did tell him that. I said, your message was not clear at all, and it just looked like a commercial to me. I wish you guys would have heard the conversation when I got offline. But I kind of let Chris and them talk a little bit, and they went down to, oh, yes, we're victims, and on. And I'm like going, not so sure. So
they didn't sound apologetic. They didn't say.
When somebody says that they throw that victim card in your face going forward for discernment, for increased discernment capabilities, stop with the emotional response and saying, oh, it's horrible what happened to them, and say, okay, well, we'll see. Or were they sent there to lead you astray? You don't know. And I'm not saying get rid of your empathy. That's the greatest thing about human beings. It's not the empathy part of it, but realize it could be somebody who really needs someone to come alongside of them and say, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But it also could be somebody that is been manipulated by Satan himself, that's there to set a trap.
Yeah.
And that is something that, don't just jump when something comes your way, or the Bible talks about being blown around like a leaf. We're going to be going into some very, very difficult days. It's going to get worse. The drone thing is one of them. And the action by our legislature is another one. I'm proud that they all stood up to stop the vote on the gun bills. However, the question is, and we're going to go into that, is, and my question is also on this, is why now? Why now? Yeah. Are they all stepping up forward? I'm proud of them. I'm not going to take the little glory moment away because everybody's going, yay, they did the right thing. Okay. They did do the right thing. However, there's a further question of why now? They didn't kill the bills. It's going to come back and bite us again unless we get in that fight and do something to absolutely bury this, in up to and including going after every one of those people that pushed it on the other side to make sure they know, you bite us, there's going to be a bite that's going to happen that we are never going to let go of. And go ahead and sue every single one of them. That's something John Tater and I talked about yesterday. They all need to be sued for threat, for violation of their oath of office. And it needs to be every single one of them in concert with Dana Nessel, who's sitting at the top, which we're going to get into at the 11 o'clock hour, with a over $1 million donation that she and her wife were heads of the organization. That was a direct payment to the organization, to the signature gatherers.
I want to hit that one a minute.
Yep, let's do it, because they are moving this thing from top to bottom, and they're all involved.
Just real quick, though, because Dana Nessel does not have a wife, right? She is a female. There is no such thing as a female having a wife. It is in violation of not only God's commands, right? It's an abomination before him. As such, she is. It is a violation of our law, both federal and state. There is no such thing in this history. I feel for that child that has been put in their custody. Right? That's always been on the forefront of my mind. Anytime Nessel comes up, that name, I think of that little kid, that little boy who's being raised in that absolute sickening, wicked household, right? And I don't know if anybody's ever talked about that or not. Everybody's so focused on that fact, right? But she is a felon for that reason alone, right? And the judgment for that is very clear. Right? That used to be punishable by death in all the states of this union. Understand that. That is what we're talking about when somebody says Dana Nessel has a wife, right? Bam, look at that. Conviction. You have the proof right there to deal with it. And not one single person in our government wants to deal with that. They don't even want to touch that fact, right? That's, to my knowledge, that has never been brought up. Yet it's their responsibility to deal with that. On that alone, day one, she should have been absolutely removed and prosecuted for that fact. And then none of anything else she would have done would have happened, right? But because we have such, and I like, they want to call this a lame duck session of our legislature. We have such a lame duck legislature in its entirety that they won't deal with issues, right? It's the same thing that Christ was calling out the Pharisees for, right? When he says, these things you do, but these things you are not left undone. Right? The more weightier parts of the law, the judgments, the statutes, those are the things they left undone. And it's the same thing. We have government officials that are being left undone. They want to deal with all these little petty issues that make absolutely no difference, that for the most part, they don't even have the authority to deal with, right? But they want to leave all the judgments that they're responsible for undone. And thus we reap that same wrath because we left it undone. We can't expect any different, right? Where do their oaths come from? You just brought that up, right? Where do our government oaths come from? Why do they take an oath to the Constitution? It's very clear that at the beginning of the government that our Lord had set up with the Israelites, Numbers 30, verse 2, right? He told them, if a man vow a vow unto the Lord, which they do, they raise their right hand to God when they swear that vow, right? Or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, which they do, they swear before all men and have physical bonds that they have to acquire. He shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth, right? To my knowledge, not one of them has been doing that. Okay? That's the biggest issue we have. And what's funny is, Donna, you had just brought up the fact that they were able to shut down the gun bill, right? Cool. Absolutely. Why haven't they been doing that for decades is my first question, because they're all unconstitutional. And they won't even bring them up for repeal, let alone talk about them. They only talk about them when the other side wants to bring them up, right? That's the only time they ever hit the floor for discussion. And that's a huge issue, because they should be constantly producing bills to repeal all of this nonsense with that context that it's unconstitutional. They never had the authority to do it.
Well, I'm going to get into this thing right now because I think there's a deeper level to this with, with the wife issue of say Dana Nessel and such. And I'm just going to say it right now, with how many people are in there that you can see that they are married to someone who, by optics, it doesn't, I'm not buying the sniff. It's not the sniff test here. Okay. And I am concerned that a lot of this stuff is actually a CIA operation, and that they're just partners in the play that's going on. So this is Chuck Schumer's wife, allegedly. And I'm sorry, but I ain't buying that this is a woman. Okay. I'm going to tell you that right now. And so I don't know what's going on there, but that ain't it. Okay. And so when I look at what's going on with a lot of the partnerships of these people that are in office, and look at how they actually work together, you'll see it at the 11 o'clock hour that, this is off on a tangent a little bit. However, when you start looking at how they're paired up and they work together. So in the organization that Nessel and her wife, were heads of, there's a secession there as they were working together. Look at what happened with Obama and Perkins Coie and allegedly Michelle and such. And I hope everybody else is out there like me, is like looking at this going, I don't know, this sure seems like a lot of these people came from the CIA farm. They started out there. And then when you look at the children and how they raise children, the Obama's children are a perfect example of that. I'm kind of not buying some stuff going on there. I believe that they actually, that there's more to that, to the potential of raising children in order to be part of this satanic death cult. Because that's exactly what I'm seeing.
I think, excuse me, today's BNN show is largely about discernment. And if you didn't see the show on Monday, that's okay. You got the lesson that was supposed to be instilled as a result of Monday's show. You got it today. If you didn't get it yesterday, you got it today. And that's all you need to know. You don't have to go back and watch Monday's BNN to get the lesson, because you got it here. And what a great show that was from that perspective, because you got that contrast. Chris had a good point. It was a worthy point, but he wasn't listening in on the show. And, about victims. And we have to be careful because, like you said, and you've been talking about Tudor Dixon using her father's death as an emotional lure to get people to want to vote for her.
And cancer, Karen.
Oh, yeah. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, but it can be subtle sometimes. And what happened on Monday was subtle and harder for a lot of people to discern than other forms of trickery. And that's the point that we're making. You have to be very careful. And like Bill said, if you study the scriptures, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you. If you study people, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you. Mm-hmm. And if you watch BNN, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you, because I will admit, Donna is much better at this skill than I am. I was a puppy with a little less socialization as
yeah, I had a hard go, but that's on my end, baby.
I learned a lot. I was bullied. I learned a lot about some of those things through my youth, and it still affects me in how I think. But these people were trying to say, get you a little bit emotionally involved, even through your disgust, but to pique your curiosity. That was the avenue.
That was the
pique
avenue.
Your curiosity, and then you want to know more. No, you don't need to know more. All you needed to know was the point was that guy is somebody to steer clear of, and to put away from yourselves, as the scripture might say. Put away that which is not acceptable to God. The end. Why did he say to the people of Israel, when you go in to these people that I want you to destroy, I don't want you to bring anything back. You don't bring back the cattle. You don't bring back the people. You don't bring back the jewelry. You don't bring back the idols. He wanted nothing that could possibly influence them away from his way. And whenever they did, they got into some trouble. And like Ralph was saying, you guys go back and forth and back and forth. Each generation, nothing is new under the sun. But we're starting to lose our discernment because of the failure in our education, because of the toxification of our brains. But okay, it happened, like Donna was saying. Get over it, acknowledge it, recognize and accept it, and say, okay, I've got to guard my emotions so I don't make stupid decisions based on the lure of people who want to turn me into a victim. And if I have a question about something, I can ask somebody like my friend Donna or like my friend Bill who studies the scriptures. Hey, I heard about this thing about the scripture being taken this way. What do you think? And they would say, hey, you're nuts. Don't go there.
Okay, I'm going to show you another one. Ain't no way I'm buying this. There is no possible way in the whole world that I am buying this. Sorry. I didn't. I'm just not that gullible, and there you go.
Oh, and remember, a lot of these little things are put up like as red flags, right? People, I used the analogy once. I don't know if it was on this show or another one I did. I used the analogy once that that oftentimes in life you can relate it to two castles, right? The war is
right
versus evil.
You
can relate this to two castles. If you have two kingdom castles that are set up nearby each other, right? You have one that's set up on a good foundation, and that is the scriptures, the law, the Constitution, bring it into government, however you want to do it. But it's set up on a good foundation, and the whole castle is built up upon it. And then you have another one that is built up basically out of rubble that is torn down. It's held together by duct tape and twine and baling wire. Right, to make it look like it's a legitimate castle, yet it's not. And you have the armies of each kingdom fighting against each other, warring against each other. Right. If you study the old time city walls and such, how they had wall gunners. Right. I love the wall gunners. Those guys, they fired some massive weaponry. That it's kind of my drive. I love looking into the old weapons and such. But anyway, they were to defend their castle, right? So you have these two castles firing at each other. Well, what's happening a lot of times is the good kingdom with the correct foundation, when the bad or the evil kingdom starts raising up their flags, whether it be the LGBTQ or the elections or you name it, right? They put up these flags to let you know what's actually going on and what they're promoting. The good kingdom's busy firing at these flags. We got to tear that down, and they fire at the flag and fire at the flag, and they every once in a while they manage to hit a flag and remove it. All the while, that wicked kingdom doesn't care about the flags that we're flying, right? Because everybody's so indoctrinated, they're not going to believe them anyway. They don't need to tear down our flags, our little points, our talking points. What they're busy doing is they're firing at our foundation. All right? Who's going to win if we don't focus on the correct issue? We can nail down all their flags, all their talking points all day long, and we might win some, we might lose some, but all the while, they're busy firing at the very core of what holds this nation in a union.
And I'll go back to that, and I gotta say, I believe that all of this nonsense is funded because they pick off small groups, and then the CIA, Mossad, GCHQ, they're probably providing them all with the stupid flags and the posters and such. I mean, look how BLM, Burn, Loot, and Murder was funded, and that's a corporation. Sorry, that is a corporation. People got sucked in by a corporation who should be sued in the billions for the damage that they did, as any other company was. It was a company. And what did they sell? They sold emotional reaction to capture people at the captured asset level in order to do their dirty work. And this is happening all over the place and all the time. Now, I'm going to go into an unpopular subject here, but I'm going to do it anyway, because that's what we do on BNN. Look at the Republican Party. There are some very, very good people there at the bottom that want to do something and they don't know exactly what to do. There's no true leadership in the Republican Party. The closest thing I saw to that was Nick Prill at the Kent County meeting, where he actually kind of took control of the meeting and actually led it. But there is no purpose. It seems like it's a constant game of chasing tails, busy work, fundraising to do more fundraising. Nothing gets done. And there's no plan to get something done. It's just busy work and hoping and praying to God that they have some effect. That is not leadership in any way, shape, or form for what we've seen. A leader is going to go in there and it's going to be everybody out of the pool. Let's take this thing and get it back to what it needs to function as a republic. And anybody that's out for money has got a problem. Now, I've had a discussion with several friends, and I'll go into the marriage aspect of it, because I am a firm believer that the government should not in any way, shape, or form be in marriage. End of story. That's done. They can be there as a recorder, but that is where their involvement stops, right there on all levels. Because quite honestly, the issue that has been co-opted for gay marriage, it's the same that happened with straight marriage, and that is for the government to own your assets and your children. That's simple, plain and simple, cut to the chase. This is plain and simple of a way to look for more benefits from the government. But in the process, they've taken everyone prisoner to, in fact, own your assets and your children. So the core issue never gets talked about. And they keep us fighting with an issue that if we were really doing our job, we would be going to each other and helping and becoming more of a paraclete, or someone that would walk alongside of someone, rather than taking our anger out on things. But this starts at the first step with getting the government out of it. That's why that we have not won the abortion issue, because you're talking a philosophical disagreement that cannot ever be won, and it was designed that it would never be won. The biggest organization that has fought against sanctity of life, and I know the gal that wrote the heartbeat bill, was in fact Right to Life. Sorry, serving it up. That's the way it is. Because why? Because if we end this nonsense, they're out of a job. Same thing with cancer. You fix cancer industry is out of a job. Guess what? I was diagnosed with cancer. I lost my dad during the election, and shame on Tudor Dixon, who is a despicable human being for throwing that out there to manipulate people's emotions to give her the pity vote in the election. Should never happen. I will never stop talking about it. If the Republicans are dumb enough to vote her back in because she's a DeVos puppet, because they're all in this together, make no mistake. This is all about money. It's all about protecting the money system. But we're going to have to stand up as patriots and do the right thing. The whole issue of, and here's my behind chewing to the Christians out there. All of us. I'm an unapologetic Christian. I should have got a handle of this earlier. I should have walked into this earlier. I should have done my job. All of us should be able to sit there and humbly say, I screwed up. Should have gotten in it in the 70s because I'm older than all of you guys. It was like, I was born in 1963, a couple of months before President Kennedy was assassinated. And I take full responsibility for not getting in the game earlier. I should have. But when we all saw it, we all saw there was something wrong, but nobody knew what to do. Well, at this point in time, we better sharpen our discernment a little bit, because they're going to take us right back down the same path again. They're going to use all of these issues. They're going to use them all. You want to know how you solve the abortion issue? You defund it. You defund it. You defund any of the marriage credits, and you put everybody back on the same page again. And so I have a lot of friends who are gay and lesbian. I do. And I love them intensely. But when I was running for governor, the dumb question kept coming up is, well, what's your opinion on gay marriage? And I'm like, my opinion is that is the dumbest question that you could ask me. And the reason being is that question should never come up, because you're not getting to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is, why is government in marriage at all? It shouldn't be in gay or straight marriage. It's a usurpation. And once we end this fighting between people who have differing opinions on something that cannot be won on in the areas of argument, and we get the government back into what it's going to be, that's when we start healing our nation and getting everybody, working together. And I firmly believe that. And right now we've got everybody that is on opposite sides of the fence on every issue, and that's what they want, and that's why we never win anything that sets the nation right, that gives us peace in the land, and lives the way that God intended us to live, in my opinion. And we're going to have to stop targeting these, targeting groups of people. The group we need to target is the damn government. That's it. And they're the one that's behind all of this division.
Keep us fighting over the symptoms so we never treat the root cause.
That's exactly it. The root cause is that the government needs to be gutted. And I don't know anybody that has, and I've been calling myself Brass Balls Brandenburg, because nobody has the guts to get in there and do what it takes. And they get captured on these stupid little issues that would go away if we were running the government right. So
and it stems a little bit beyond that, because you're right in the fact that especially the whole marriage issue.
Okay, I'm going to give you like 30 seconds because Chadwick's ready to come on here, and we'll pick this up again next Wednesday. But I appreciate what this is going to be a long episode today, and I'd love to go over, but I can't today, because what's going to come out at 11 o'clock is going to shake the earth on what happened in the state of Michigan with the 2022 election. It ends right here. And Brandenburg right now is going to be putting together a bunch of attorneys that are absolutely going to nail this thing to the wall, and we're done with it, because the government is not serving we the people. So I hate to cut everybody off, but I'm going to do it today. I'll give you your 30 seconds next week. Is that okay?
That works.
Yeah.
I'm very proud to know you guys and be friends with you guys, because I love you intensely. I think you're amazing people, and I really respect the knowledge that you have on everything. And with that said, guys, so this is what's next. This is the book Tucker. I have a signed copy, very proudly, from Chadwick Moore. And I got to tell you, I was able to talk to him at length the last time we met, and I'm going to tell you, an amazingly wonderful person. And so I'm very glad to have Chadwick on. And with that said, we're going to go to a quick break here, and I'll be right back with Chadwick Moore. And thank you guys. I'm glad you're friends, that I can cut you guys off and say, we'll see you next week. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Love you guys.
Love you too. Bye.
We'll be right back in about 30 seconds. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg and it's the 18th day of December 2024. And I got to tell you, I'm excited about this interview. So Chadwick Moore is the New York Times best-selling author and contributing editor at The Spectator. He's written for the New York Times, New York Post, Playboy, Breitbart, Newsweek, and the Washington Times, The Advocate, and Out magazines, among others. In 2017, Chadwick was fired from his job as editor at large for The Advocate and Out, and subsequently blacklisted by the left for penning an article describing him coming out as a conservative. Chadwick is a regular guest on Fox News, or was, and the Tucker Carlson Tonight Show and Gutfield. So I'm gonna here's the book, and like I said, and here's my signed page from Chadwick, which I'm very proud of, and I want to welcome Chadwick to the show. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Great to see you again. How's everything?
It's very, very good. And the bees and the chickens are all good. The bees are hibernating for the winter. We had a long discussion about bees and chickens and having a farm, and it was wonderful. So how are you?
Things are good. Everything's great. Excited about Christmas, and the whole world just feels different this year, doesn't it? There's such a relief, and everyone just seems so excited about what's ahead. Even the left seems a little tampered down and calmed down. I think even a lot of Democrats are a little relieved at how the election ended up, even though they might not have voted that way.
Yeah, I think you have to. Everybody looks at it and sees that the entire United States and really the world was just better under the rightful president of the United States, President Donald Trump, who really should have still been the president, but they cheated. And, we know they cheated. And guess what? I've got at 11 o'clock, I've got this little gem here, a report that's coming out that shows the connection with Attorney General Nessel in the state of Michigan and her wife, who actually were involved in a over $1 million donation to the signature gatherers, which were responsible for kicking 5 of us off the ballot.
Wow.
This is going to be groundbreaking, and I guarantee you that this is going to rock the world when this comes out.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, so it's great. So what else is going on with you, Chadwick? I mean, I had a really nice discussion with you when we were at that event, and really like to hear, some of the things that you learned about Tucker off, talking with him, and which everybody loves Tucker. I mean, how can you not love Tucker? Tucker's a beautiful human being. I love his face too. He's got the greatest expressions.
Yeah, he sure does. We kind of captured that for the cover, that kind of like Mona Lisa Tucker face, where you can't tell if he's about to scold you or about to laugh or what he's thinking. That's sort of classic Tucker face, isn't it?
I think this is the face that says this is some kind of bullshit going on there. That's
right, exactly.
Yeah. But I'm going to let them talk long enough to let them make the idiots out of themselves. That's what I see with Tucker.
For sure. Totally. So, the book came out, I was working on the book a year before, actually we started almost exactly a year before he was kicked off Fox News. And then the book was basically done when that happened. It was just going through the editing process. And then, of course, this was April 2023. And then, of course, we pushed back publication until that summer and updated the book. I interviewed Tucker a couple more times to get the aftermath of what happened there. And as you mentioned, I was also kicked off Fox when we announced the book because Fox couldn't have anyone who was seen as too close to Tucker on their network. Even though I'm pretty nice to Fox in the book, but they don't care about that. They're Fox News. They suck. So so things have been going good. The book has been really well received, and with it, I was, it was a great project to work on because it didn't really feel like necessarily writing a political book. I was just writing a book about a guy, a human being who I felt was really interesting and deserved to have his story told, and really getting into who he is, where he came from, what makes him tick, what his day-to-day is like, who he is off camera. And I got to spend a ton of time with Tucker. He was super generous with giving me access to him and his family and really anything I wanted. And it was a really great project to work on, and people seem to be really enjoying it. So that's always a nice thing to hear as well.
Well, I think Tucker is so beloved by the American people for being someone who stood up for what he believed in and then kept on going. And so I'd like to meet him someday. I really would. And that would be quite an honor. But it was quite an honor to meet you and be able to talk with you a bit and see the work that you've done. So what were the things that really impacted you as you worked with Tucker, and how did this change your life?
I think I just got more of an appreciation. It was interesting because a lot of what I think one of the reasons that you can attribute to his success is the fact that he's really interested in these kind of bigger questions, and not just like Democrats versus Republican, but these larger questions that politics are downstream from, questions of beauty, of spirituality, of family and love and things of this nature. And if you remember on his Fox show, he would talk about things that no other cable news host could get away with, like, architecture and things like that, because he actually genuinely cared about it. You can't really fake an interest in something like that that's not just the usual kind of cable news bickering. So, I think working on this book, I did sort of get an appreciation for, the important things in life and being around someone like that who's so influential and so powerful, and while we're working on this, he was the most powerful person in cable news. Seeing the sort of the level he goes to humble himself and to remind himself that he's not God. He said to me once that the job title is I'm right, I'm God. If you're a cable news host, like, I'm right, you're wrong, I know everything, you know nothing. And a lot of people in television start to believe that stuff about themselves, and it turns them into jerks. And if you've met a lot of people in television, you would know that. And but he understood that that he's not. He's just some person who's just living his life, and no different than anyone else who's alive today or who came before him, of no greater moral or spiritual value than anyone else on the planet. And sort of to be to be reminded of that, and to be exposed to someone who believes that was a great part of working on the book.
That's really beautiful, because I like the fact that we can focus on being Americans and not being divided into all these subgroups. I feel very strongly about that, and I think that America's ready for that. I really do. People are sick of the fighting and the divisions of all sorts.
It really feels that way. It feels, fingers crossed. The left has been really suspiciously, almost frighteningly quiet lately. Hopefully they're not plotting for something more evil than they've been up to for the last 4 years. But it does sort of feel like there's a return to normalcy. That return to normalcy that was promised by Biden, and of course never happened and went completely in the opposite direction. It sort of seems like there's a kind of reckoning right now. Knock on wood, but that it stays this way. And a part of that might be simply because, even the left sort of feels like a sense of relief that Trump is president, that he came in with a very clear message, a very clear agenda. Everyone knows exactly who he is, how he's going to govern. He's done it before. Whereas the alternative, Kamala, but even with Biden, but especially with Kamala, it was absolute chaos. There was absolutely no clarity on what would happen, what she believed, who she was, how she was going to lead the country, because she didn't believe anything. She was just a meat puppet for whatever interest was in vogue or polling well that day, or whoever was paying her. So there seems to be this kind of stability that has returned to the country, and people seem to be very relieved by that. And I hope that stays.
Yeah, the humanity part of it. I'm sure that you've met a lot of people in your travels and such. What are some of the best examples too that you've seen that really touched your heart? So I'm like sitting here right now thinking that you and Tucker should both get together and get that badge of honor of getting kicked off, mainstream media, so that, because you did stand for something. So what are some of the other things you've seen that have really impacted you on a very human level?
Oh man. Well, I think you're right. It is a badge of honor at this point to be kicked off those networks, off the corporate media. I think that for a while, when I was still invited on Fox, I kind of felt like there was something wrong with me. It's sort of like, why do they still want me on? What am I doing wrong? It's sort of like being the only oligarch in Russia who wasn't sanctioned by the U.S. Like, everyone's laughing at you. So
it's like walking in there with muddy shoes or something.
Right? Yeah, totally. Yeah. So oh man, I think sort of you kind of mentioned in your intro of me, getting in 2017 when I came out conservative, getting blacklisted by the left and like losing all my friends and fired from my jobs and all that. And which I wasn't expecting at all because I was like super naive when I wrote this.
Really?
I wrote this column coming out as conservative. I just got it was right after Trump's first inauguration, and I just got so sick of the behavior of the left and especially in media, my colleagues in liberal media, because I was working for Out in the Advocate, writing for the New York Times and those places, and I just really couldn't keep quiet anymore. So I just penned this article that I felt was sort of innocent. I didn't really think anyone would read it, and I just sort of didn't want people to think that I was like these lunatics and that I didn't hate Trump and I didn't hate his supporters. And I believe that as a journalist, you should try to pursue this thing called the truth and try to hear both sides and see what's really going on. But that was, of course, a bridge way too far. That was hate speech, and I was the most evil person in the world for writing such a thing. And so I wasn't prepared for the backlash again because I was super naive. Like I didn't realize how, and I didn't think that I would, lose everything that I did. But equally, I wasn't prepared for the swell of like love and outreach from just everyday Republicans and conservatives that came my way. I didn't really, have any friends who were Republicans and conservatives. I didn't know anyone in conservative media. I have, a few family members. But from then on, just that was just further evidence of everything that I had been told, and everyone that on my former side believed about the right was, absolutely incorrect and couldn't be more further from the truth. And you still see that love everywhere. And I spent my whole adult life on the left, and I know how they are, and I know what makes them tick, and I know how hateful they are and how insecure they are. And it's two different worlds from operating on the left and in the right. And one thing you see on the right is like so much joy and love, even during the darkest times of the lawfares against Trump or anything happening during the Biden years. So that's continued. I haven't seen that change at all.
Yeah, it's really amazing how people can turn on their friends so quickly based on disagreements, and it's kind of crazy. I can't even imagine the amount of backlash. And you walked right away, kind of away from an incredible career, not knowing what was going to happen next, regardless of the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, maybe stupidly so, but I would never, not stupidly so, because I would never change a thing and never regret anything. And it just never even really it never occurs to me much to self-censor, which is maybe, to varying degrees of damage or reward. But it's just something that you never really regret speaking what you think is true. You never regret stating your opinion and trying to live honestly. We've seen a lot of people, especially, in recent years, make similar kind of breaks with the left. And no one ever regrets doing that. You might struggle for a little while or have to retool your life, but no one regrets staying true to themselves. And these people who hang on because out of fear, it's just sort of the most pathetic thing in the world.
Yeah, it really is to follow anything when inside there's something wrong. And I think there's a lot of people who have felt that there was something wrong for a very long time. And that would be on both sides, because that's what I'm seeing going away, is that we shouldn't have two sides. We really shouldn't. We should have one effort going forward as Americans, in my opinion. And I'm not quite sure exactly how the best way to get people there is yet, but I think just walking together and listening to people and understanding their perspective. Did you see a lot of people that really knew there was something wrong, but that you were working with that were kind of on the left, that were afraid of conservatives? Are they afraid of us in any way, shape, or form? Is it fear-based, or is there something else? I'm trying to really understand.
No, it's a great question. And I would say that, there was a time that they could probably pretend that, and I think that you're always going to have that kind of 15% of like absolute wackadoos who are like, right now they're like, stocking up on their vaccines or whatever, or their hormones. And they're like, Trump's going to deport me and put me into a camp because I'm like transgender or whatever, those people, or, Trump's going to like kill all the people of this race, like the total wackadoos, but they don't really have, they're out there screaming into the microphone. But I think that, there was a time that they could have pretended that they were afraid of the right, but they can't anymore. They've been humiliated too often and proved too wrong too often. And I think in media, what you would see is along the same vein. So you would have journalists who would say that, they're doing their job of speaking truth to power, and which would be sort of along those same lines. But the corruption's been exposed to such blatant levels, and now I think that they expose themselves as not operating out of a place of self-preservation or out of fear, but out of a desire for power and saving face. I mean, these people, they can't hide it anymore. They don't believe any of these lies they tell about the right anymore. It's just, they just absolutely want to destroy and have complete power. And they believe that they earned it. They believe they deserve it. They believe that they are the smartest, brightest, most moral people in the world, and they should be in charge of things, and they know how to best micromanage things without having any really real experience except for academia. This is, I think, the state of the left, and everyone sort of sees it. And as you mentioned before, about the two-party system, it almost feels antiquated to talk about Democrat and Republican at this point, because Trump shattered all of that. And if there's any divide right now, it's populist versus statist. And the media and the left can't admit the fact that they are absolute statists, which is what they are. I mean, that is what their political beliefs are. And everyone else is on the populist side. And the Democrats almost had their populist moment with Bernie Sanders. And of course, we look at what the DNC treated them. And, a lot of those Bernie people came over to the Trump side. And there's some of my own family that did that, because you might disagree on smaller things, but the bigger issues here was basically this great divide between the government and the people.
Yeah, that seems to be where it all is. What I see too is it's the preservation, as you said, to your point, of the power structure and the money. Honestly, I would love for you to come to Michigan and look at the nonsense going on here, because I believe that Michigan is the head of the snake of corruption, because of all of the connected events and people and such that are here. And it would be really great to have a book written about that, about the corruption that are here. This is like low-hanging fruit. I'm not kidding you. It's this low-hanging fruit. And to realize too, the stories of people that have been absolutely devastated by Gretchen Whitmer, Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and really the entire legislature. They all did the wrong thing. They all could be and should be prosecuted for what they've done, because the elections were rigged here, and it wasn't just rigged at the top levels. It went all the way down. Another concern that I have is with President Trump winning, and I've said this from the beginning, why did they let him win? Because when you look down ballot, the down ballot candidates were the ones that were absolutely slaughtered in this election. And there's no way that I can believe that we would have so many people running unopposed. I mean, it's nonsense. And I think that if we did a full investigation in it, not only would it prove that he won, but it would prove that he won by such a staggering majority that I think that people would have their eyes opened to the fact that he is the people's choice. He won, but he won by it was a bloodbath.
Oh, absolutely. What do you think of? I recently heard that Mayor Pete wants to run for governor of Michigan. What do you make of that?
It's once again, it's like you're talking about people that are running from the inside. And I think that they're so entrenched, and they're entrenched with all of their connections and such, that I think we have a big problem. And a thorough cleaning of house is going to happen first before we see any. I mean, if I were going to go in and look at this as a corporate structure, which it should be, the government should be run like a business as a corporate structure. You keep a few people in that know some things going on, but you keep them on a pretty tight leash. But to have somebody who is a governor or is that's been within the system for so long, I think that we've got a real problem. And Pete did a lousy job as the in transportation. I mean, I have a problem with that. I don't know what you think about it, but I don't think he's the right guy. How's that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree with you. I just think it's so.
Yeah, I brought up Detroit because there's some other connections there that I know of, and I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole there. But I don't like the fact that he moved here to the state it seemed a little scripted. All of a sudden, this guy shows up in Michigan and he's like, he's a Michigander. I'm like, no, you're not. It's like, why are you here? Is it just moving the pieces around on the chessboard to have? I'm going to say that he's in Michigan because Michigan is the most corrupt state in the nation. I think we've got, I mean, it's like, California, hold our beer. Come over here and look at what's actually done here with the insurance industries, with the child trafficking that's gone on in the state of Michigan, with the money laundering that's here. And you can connect them all to the money laundering as well as the developers that are involved in it, and what's happened with the World Economic Forum, the headquarters coming here. It's so connected that everything seems to be, I don't know, just one great big show.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I would love to come back. I had such a good time when I was there when I met you, for sure. And I haven't been.
Great visit. It was great, just talking about everything,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but what are your thoughts on Pete?
Oh, he's like laughable and hilarious and stupid and incompetent, and he couldn't. I mean, he was like a terrible mayor in South Bend. He's just some sort of like affluent, coddled professional who is a MacArthur fellow. Is that what they call him? And I sort of enjoy like watching his hubris because he thinks that he's so important and capable, and he's just absolutely incompetent.
Well, Duggan over in Detroit too. I mean, look at this. We've got complete and utter failures that are wanting to be put in office for governor or whatever it is they're running for. It's like, spin the roulette wheel and see which one they're going to go for this time, because it's the entrenched establishment, and Pete's got a record of absolute failure. And as you said, it's pretty laughable, but so does Duggan. And so why are we even considering these people for yet another position? It's almost like we've made politicians into a celebrity status. So now we're cheering for our own teams and such. And I think it's just such a low IQ system. It's not even funny. We need to get the people that are best suited for the jobs, and the rest of them, it's time to, let them go.
Yeah, I would agree. And no better example than like AOC when you said that politicians reaching celebrity status. I mean, this absolute moron who was just plopped into office in a district where she's never even lived, and so I visited like twice.
She's a bartender. She was
a bartender.
Bartender that was basically answered a casting call for this.
Yeah, and the best part, one of my favorite AOC stories is very recently they passed, which she was a big supporter of, $20 minimum wage here in New York, and which, by the way, is like so insane. Going out to eat now is crazy expensive. It's ridiculous. So no one goes out to eat anymore. I mean, you just go to like bar food. You go for a burger and fries, $100 for two people. I mean, it's nuts because of they killed the industry, and these waiters and bartenders are making $20 an hour on top of tips. You still have to tip the same. So they're making, six figures to sling burgers in a bar. And it's so great. So AOC was a big supporter of this $20 minimum wage. And the bar that she worked at, a place called Coffee Shop in Union Square, had to close because they couldn't afford the minimum wage, the $20 minimum wage. So that closed because of AOC, where she used to work, because of the policy that she supported. This is sort of idiot we're dealing with, and destructive person who operates on feelings and Instagram celebrity.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at how dumb these people are. It's like Tlaib and the policies of the squad that was basically on attack. These attack dog women who they're just not all that. They're not all that with it, okay? And it is concerning, very concerning. So Pete needs to leave Michigan and go somewhere else where he can crawl under some snaky little rocks somewhere and just go away. Michiganders are sick of them, and sick of the politics as usual and such. What do you think of what President Trump is doing and how he's queuing up his cabinet and his appointments?
Well, it's really exciting. I mean, he's so clearly learned a ton, and he gave a press conference yesterday, I believe. I didn't watch the whole thing yet, but he's been so quiet lately, which I think is making the left really nervous because he actually is, he must be very diligently trying to fill these slots. I think I'm most excited about Doge. That's the thing that now has got me super excited. And if that can really take off and cut $2 trillion from the budget and fire half the federal workforce, how amazing would that be? I mean, look at what Elon fired, like 85% of the staff at Twitter, and it runs just fine, even better than ever now. So, I mean, if they can have real power at Doge, I know it's a sort of volunteer position and they're just going to give recommendations, but man, that would be so amazing. That would be like a New Deal level of change to the federal government, obviously in the other direction from the New Deal. I mean, it seems like it could be absolutely historic and would really herald in a completely new generation in America and the way the system operates. So that's what's got me most excited right now. And it seems like Trump is giving Vivek and Elon a lot of power there.
Yes, that is very, very exciting. I think the best quote I heard out of that is that they're working to obsolete the entire department and have that going. So let's just obsolete all the rest of them, and then let's work ourselves out of a job. That earns like large respect right there. Instead of continuing on. I mean, that's a huge.
It has an end date. It's July 4th, 2026 is when the department shuts down. The only time a government office has an end date that we're shutting down on this date, which was brilliant to do. Yeah,
it's kind of brilliant. I have some questions about some of his appointments, of course, but I also know that he works very, very well with bringing attention to things that need to have attention, not necessarily that it's the obvious way that it looks like it's going. So I'm just kind of sitting back and watching how this goes and seeing what the strategy is for some of it. But it does. One thing we know is that the track record is there. We had peace. As soon as Biden gets in, the fake President Biden, the whatever he is, that he bombed Syria day one. And all of the conflicts across the world are so troubling. And what's going on right now with Russia in Ukraine, if they don't knock us right into a World War III or something equally as horrible before President Trump gets in, I guess I'm going to be a little surprised. But I think the only reason why we're here right now is because President Trump has made those relationships, and they know he's going to be in and make it right. So that's the hope that we have. And I think every single one of us should be praying for him, our nation, even the people that have the reason to be upset with us for what we've done. All of the stuff that's been done wrong under Biden. I mean, can you even name one thing he's done right? I can't even name one thing that Biden, Kamala, I got to say her name that way, Kamala, and the rest of the nonsense has done,
I can't think of one thing. I thought maybe once there was one little thing, and then I can't remember what it was. So no, I can't think of one thing.
I can't either.
But you're right to. It's just so crazy how everything immediately went to heck after he got in on a global. I mean, domestically, obviously, but it just shows the power that office has, just in the bravado and the personality behind that office. I mean, Trump didn't have to do anything, and the world knew not to mess up on his watch. Russia knew not to invade Ukraine. But as soon as Biden gets in, everyone knew he was weak. Everyone knew he wouldn't do anything. Everyone knew he didn't have all his capacities. Everyone knew he was surrounded by excessively mediocre people. And the world just decided it was time for a free-for-all. We don't have to do nation building and invade all these countries that we have been doing for the last 50 years to have peace through strength. Peace through strength, as Trump showed, doesn't mean you have to bomb the Middle East into oblivion and start putting in puppet dictators like we did in Ukraine or other places. You can just have a man in office that people know isn't messing around. And it looks like we're returning to something that we had in the first term.
Right. The humanitarian part of President Trump was what always impacted me. He would sit and talk to people, and he really cared. The time when he picked the hat up off the ground of one of our military guys in a storm and put it back on his head, the little boy that came and wanted to see him. And I think we all kind of feel that way about President Trump, that this sense of, wow, he's one of us. He's done the right thing, and he actually does care, and he set an example. Now we've got that to look forward to, and all I can say is every one of us needs to be praying for this nation and him that something bad doesn't happen. But I think the next step is to go into it in the humanitarian way to really heal more so our very broken nation. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's so funny when you look at like foreign aid, it's called, and how much money, I don't know the number, but I'm sure it's like in the trillions or hundreds of billions of dollars that the US spends in foreign aid. So you hear that and most Americans think it's like what we're like dropping food on places. It's not. It's all like psyops. It's all like election rigging in other countries. It's all this covert CIA deep state stuff that they believe is somehow in the U.S. interest. It's not like helping build homes in Africa, which is I think what most people think it is. So we need to. I mean, if we can cut even just a fraction of that budget, and of course things need to be redirected at home. And I mean, just look at North Carolina, what we're still dealing with there. It's
tragic.
Anytime something happens here, East Palestine, Ohio, or what happened in Hawaii, the fire in Hawaii, and now North Carolina. Florida miraculously doesn't seem to have these problems. I wonder why that is. But you have a lot of these. Every time there's a disaster, the federal government's nowhere to be seen. What do we pay taxes for? Oh yeah, to bomb Ukraine and to teach transgender studies in Afghanistan and God knows what else.
Yeah, it's really, really, and shrimp on treadmills. That was the one that got me.
Yeah. Right.
So the concern that I see is it's not just the World Economic Forum, though that has a lot of power because of the economic impact on the nation, but the World Health Organization, the UN, all of this stuff. I think we really need to defund it. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you've written on many different topics. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree, defunding the World Health Organization. I mean, when you look at, well, first of all, we need to have a reckoning with COVID. We need to admit exactly where it came from, and that's, of course, U.S.-funded labs in China. We need to admit, I think we need to have we need a lot of committees similar to the Church Committee and others to look into what exactly has been going on in the last 7 years in this country, especially with COVID, with the lawfare, with January 6th. I mean, sadly, when we do have these things, they don't really seem to go anywhere. But at least there would be some sort of record that we could point to and down the road look at. But I'm probably share similar views with you and being very much an economic nationalist and wanting to see our money kept here and stop funding these globalist organizations. I mean, I'd be happy to kick the UN out of New York, save a lot of traffic problems for one, and. So I agree with all of that stuff. I don't think we need these organizations, and they're like puppets of other countries too. We saw during COVID that WHO was such a puppet of China that they weren't even trying to hide it.
Yeah, wouldn't you like to get into these guys' heads that do this kind of stuff and go, whatever would even make you think that this was a good idea?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
Exactly. I will say one appointee that I'm really excited about, but I'm super biased, is Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary pick, who was also the publisher of the Tucker book. He was started All Seasons Press. Yeah. So I've known him for a couple of years now, and he's a really great guy. He's also someone who had kind of a political awakening, around about the same time I did, around 2016 when Trump came along, and he sort of he used to work for George Soros and sort of saw. Yeah, and he saw, but he was managing like equity. He wasn't doing as far as I know, wasn't funding DAs or anything like that. And but he had the kind of political awakening around that time and saw how destructive this stuff was, and also saw that this Trump guy could really start changing things. So I don't think a lot of people know that about him. They just think he's a kind of finance billionaire, which he is, but he's someone who has put his money where his mouth is. He started All Seasons Press, who published the book. Specifically because a lot of Trump appointed people, if you recall a few years ago, they had book deals, a lot of Trump admin people, and they were getting canceled by the big publishers because the staff was like being triggered by the fact they were publishing conservative authors. So he started this publishing company specifically to publish conservative authors that other mainstream publishers wouldn't touch. So he's been doing that sort of behind the scenes too, which I don't think a lot of people realize, which is interesting.
That is really interesting. The whole dynamic is interesting right now. What other subjects have you written on that really piqued your interest?
Oh man, I'm really like I'm a human interest guy. I mean, even before when I was working in liberal media, I wasn't writing about politics. I was writing about human interest stories, features, investigative stories, humor, oddball stories, and I still love that stuff. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I loved working on this book so much. But of course, like politics just became too important to ignore and became fired everyone up, and so it's unavoidable even when you're writing about these other things. But if you go to I put all my stuff I write now for Substack, so chadwickmoore.com is my Substack, and
guess what? I've got it right here too. So
yeah, I just put up a piece about Caitlin Clark and that whole drama. I dabble into the culture issues. I'm working on a piece now about just sort of what happened to the media and journalists and sort of my own experience. Who are these people? And I'm still sort of sussing it out, but that'll hopefully be up this week. I'm kind of whatever's kind of whatever's really firing me up that day is usually what I sit down and start writing about.
How do you approach? Let's see. Tell me what's your favorite article that you want to have people look at.
Oh man, I mean, probably going back a long time. My favorite article, I don't know. I wrote something a while ago. Actually, it was in the second week of lockdown, so this is going back. It's on there somewhere, but I don't expect people to dig to find it. Just about the sort of like, just the sort of bizarre new world we were living in, and how I picked up a hobby during lockdown. This was before we knew that 2 weeks was going to turn into 2 years.
What was your hobby?
I started gardening, which I've been trying to do forever, and gardening and fish keeping. So being an aquarist, and which I've kept with now 4 years on. But I just started talking about starting a garden on my stoop, and then that's now moved into my backyard. And it was just sort of I don't know. I thought it was a greater piece about just sort of connecting with your neighbors more, which was the first time I started to do was during COVID, because everyone was sort of in the same boat. And what the government did to us during COVID is unforgivable and terrible, and people absolutely need to go to jail at the very minimum. But at the same time, there were some good things that came out of that time. There was like a lot of connections that were made. I think, and also, a lot of people sort of they figured out where they stand, and they figured out what kind of a person they are. They figured out the strength of their character. If they were able to resist all of these things that the government was enforcing upon us, and if they were able to stay sane and hold true to their beliefs, I think a lot of people really found out who they were. So some good came out of that time that we shouldn't forget, for sure.
Well, tell me about your aquarium.
Well, I've got 3 tanks, and I would have a lot more.
Like a passing hobby. This is a big deal.
Yeah, well, it's called multiple tank syndrome, and it happens to a lot of us when you get one, and then you just have to start getting more. I would probably have a lot more, but I don't want to annoy my better half, because with bringing home a new tank every day. And the fish are very happy. They're breeding. I'm very excited about that. I've actually just bought some plants that I can't wait to plant later today that I put in there. It's addictive. In this tank, they're called celestial pearl danios, which are really interesting fish. We didn't know they existed until 2006 in Burma. They're from Burma, and there was a genocide going on, and some scientists were there, and then they discovered this new fish they never would have discovered had there not been a genocide. So, and now it's in the aquarium trade. It's a pretty little fish. And then I've got some other tanks with some other fish, some mollies, some minnows, some quarries, which are my favorite. I could nerd out about fish keeping forever.
Oh, that's fun. Well, I have a daughter that's into that right now, and she's like,
"Oh, really?"
She's like, yeah, she's gotten into that, and then she actually uses the fish water to grow plants.
It's perfect for that, because it's very high in nutrients. It's its own fertilizer. So you change your fish water, and then you water your plants with it, and it works out that way.
Yeah, she grows them, and then she gives them to me with hope that it's going to work out, and it just doesn't. And then she has to nurse them all back to health, the plants and such. So I'd grow anything outside, but what did your garden look like this summer, and how did you approach that? Because you hadn't gardened before, had you?
No, I've always loved plants, house plants, but hadn't really tried gardening. I think, well, you probably know as good as anyone, because I think you're a more skilled outdoors person than I am. You have a big garden as well. You grow a lot of stuff, don't you? Yeah. I mean, mine's totally ornamental. It's an ornamental shade garden. It's nothing useful, because I wouldn't want to eat things that are grown in New York City soil. But and with the rats around, that might be a problem.
Are there a lot of rats there?
Oh yeah. There's still a lot of rats. That's always just been the way it is. I was bending down, digging in one of the pots the other day. This is when it was still warm out, and a rat jumped out over my shoulder and scurried away because it was
Are
hiding in one
you
of the.
serious?
Oh my god! I forgot that was a.
Is that like a normal thing?
Yeah, it's totally normal. It's like it's
Okay.
just everywhere. Yeah. But they you have a lot of respect for the rat. They're just they're basically us, just dirtier. Rats and human New Yorkers are sort of the same. They're all in the hustle, and they're all stand their ground pretty well. The rats really are not like intimidated by people at all. They're very much like you're in their way is how the rat approaches you. Which is how people approach each other here. So they're they're almost mirror images of each other. It's sort of fitting. But I found that the gardening, I probably needed tips from you because it's very, you learn along the way, and it's more mistakes than, you make a ton of mistakes, you kill a ton of things, and you start to gradually learn. And, but that's a part of the hobby, I guess. That's a part of the fun. I mean, I probably need to come to you for advice. How was it when you started out gardening?
Well, it kind of was part of our life. So we always had a garden of some sort. So I grew up that way. So I wouldn't know what it was like not to actually have that knowledge.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like
totally.
kind of it's sort of like more part of the culture and how you use every bit of what comes out of it. Compost. Oh yeah, you compost, you throw things in, and you have that sort of thing. So I'm always curious when I see somebody that's newly into it. It's like, how was the experience for you?
Frustrating, but I can see progress. And I just started composting this year, so I've got a huge bin in the back that's like full now. And so I haven't composted before, but I wonder how that's going to change things next year.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you find somebody with horses, I can tell you horse manure is little black nuggets, little black nuggets of gold, really, because it really is one of the best fertilizers you can use on plants. But the fish that you have also, just so you know, that 30%, you'll increase your yields 30% using fish water on your plants because it's a bacteria within the fish's stomach. So you kind of got a research right there, which is kind of
interesting. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I think that New York City, I was there a year or so ago at the Young Republicans meeting there at Cipriani.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was there last year. I was at that one last year.
Oh, were you? I didn't know you.
We could have met. Yeah. We didn't know each other back then.
Yeah. I was. Yeah, we were there. Well, that's kind of cool. It's funny how our paths kind of go like this,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was impacted by New York City in not necessarily a positive way, but that's because I'm from the country, and so it's a totally different lifestyle. Yeah,
it is, and not a better one, for sure. I would argue.
I felt like people were a little lost.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Yeah, it does. But what do you mean by that?
I see a lack of purpose.
Totally.
And that's what I mean by they seemed a little lost with a lack of purpose. They were working on too many projects for themselves rather than for the greater good.
Oh, totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's like super wise.
That's how I would frame it. It's like, just watching people go through the motions rather than having an ultimate goal on things. So like a person who has a farm, typically they're more, we can grow more food than what we could ever possibly consume. So you always plant more because your mindset is to share everything with the community. Yeah. And if you're stuck in a city, what I see is that the opportunity doesn't even occur to you because they're trying to afford the apartment. They're trying to make sure that they can continue to compete in that job. So it's a very much an effort of one rather than the way that you would approach it in a more of a farm community. So
that's so spot on and so true.
Yeah. So like here, a lot of our neighbors show up when we're haying and we just feed everybody. It's a good time. It's something to get together over. and people just show up because they want to be helpful, and they, then we eat together and such. It's a real different mindset. So like during COVID, I opened my barn up and we fed people all day because I refused to comply.
Yeah.
So, but you have the ability to do that when you're not stuck in a city, whereas a city, you're pigeonholed.
Mm-hmm.
And that pigeonhole, that small space that you have, this is just my perception, right or wrong. You can disagree and tell me I don't understand, and I might not understand it, but from the outside, it kind of looks like people are pigeonholed and they're trying to just protect that little area, and they really can't get outside of that area. The dynamics of the city constrains their behavior, their actions, the social construct that they've created, and that sort of thing. It's totally different.
And it's all you also begin to understand why they vote, why they're statists, why they vote for the left, is because like their whole existence is dependent on like massive unseen systems.
Yes.
They have no idea how they work, but they trust them. Like how does coffee get to New York City? Nobody knows, but it's there. And if it were to disappear one day, the city would burn itself because there's no coffee. But they're so reliant on these unseen forces that provide everything for them that they just trust them, and so they vote for them. It's the opposite of being of individualism and self-reliance.
It's dependent. Dependency on those systems, and then the systems control them. Yep. So like when people come to the country, I think what's really, really interesting to me is how they're surprised how accepted, and if you take care of animals and you take care of things, your natural inclination is to take care of things that are different than just yourself. And so you take care of your plants, and then you give most of your plants and the stuff that you have away. And I think that there's a perception that it's maybe different from that. But I think that if people came and hung out on a farm for a while, they'd find out how willing to teach people are, and willing to see that their best goals are being met.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree.
Yeah, I saw that as a little bit different, but it was interesting. I really liked St. Peter's. I thought that was pretty cool, and we took a few tours there, and it was beautiful, and met a lot of really nice people at the Young Republicans event. That was nice, and got to meet Rudy Giuliani and some other very, very nice people there, and so it was a great experience.
Oh, that's good. I think you nailed it. It's a very wise observation. It takes, it often takes an outsider to really give you the appropriate perspective. An outside visitor to come in and say, "This is wow, this place is weird, and look at how these people are behaving. This is different. This is what's going on."
Well, I would say, I wouldn't even say it's weird, but it's the structure of what they're living in have forced them into certain ways.
Yeah.
Just because of the dynamics of the city. And,
totally.
You get outside of that, and quite honestly, you're more apt to speak your mind or to disagree with the whole, because I'm still going to be over here growing my stuff, whether you like what I have to say or not. And my existence doesn't depend on anybody else's self-conflated opinion of things. It's
totally.
And if I don't like it, I'm just going to go, grow something or hang out with. It's just different. You're not quite so dependent on things.
Yeah,
so that's all what I saw. I think that Putin's kind of got things right. I'm kind of a Putin fan. Not that I agree with everybody. I never agree with everybody or anybody at any point in time, ever, never.
Yeah.
And so, even my friends that were on before this hour, I don't agree with them all the time. I listen to everybody, but I think that Putin's got it right. He's got small farms everywhere, and I'm going to be anxious to hear what you're going to do with. I know you want to do a farm, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I am kind of. Yeah. I'm looking. I'm looking at. I'm planning my escape, and it won't be to the suburbs, that's for sure. But a little land maybe, and start growing. So I'm definitely gonna need your advice then when it comes to beekeeping and chicken keeping, and maybe even growing my own food. Definitely.
Hey, we're friends. I'll come in and you can. I'll be on your phone a friend. Hey, Donna, what happened here?
Totally. I'm gonna need you. I'm gonna take you up on that.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. I'll come out and give you gifts of things that are starter kits for different things that you're involved in.
Oh, I'd love that. That'd be so cool.
Going on the chicken thing. Chickens are fun.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that's really cool. Do you know when you're planning on making the move? Have you got like a 6 or 10 year plan?
Hopefully long before that. I'm hoping like a 2-year plan, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll have to see how things play out.
Oh, that's fun. Well, let's go back to talking about the book, because I think that, so everybody, this is just us talking as people that we know each other, and Tucker's great face. I love his face. He's got a great face. Okay. And I love Tucker. He is one of the people in mainstream media that I ever really listened to, because I kind of hated them all. I didn't trust anybody. And Tucker comes on the scene, and here is this guy that, seemed for real, and was just like President Trump. He's one of us. And I'm really happy to hear that somebody who actually knows him sees him as a for real individual, because you never know.
Well, I think and I have to jump off in like 2 minutes because I got another call. I'm sorry, but I want to come back and talk to you again when I have more time. But I think like a part of that, I think with like both Tucker and Trump, is they both came from that world that they now excoriate. Trump came from the donor class. And if you remember, there's a famous moment where I think when he was running against Hillary Clinton, and they said something about like, well, you went to her daughter's wedding, and Trump said, yeah, because she paid me to. So it was like, or I paid her to. And Trump was really exposing the donor class and how that works. And then you have Tucker, who came from the sort of DC elite media class. He spent after his from about teenage years on, growing up in very well connected Washington DC, came from that sort of swamp media world. His dad worked for the federal government, and he saw exactly how atrocious the people around him were, and it sort of took those insiders to call out what was happening, and at least in Tucker's case, to also face severe social consequences. Not that he minds that much, and for Trump as well. Trump used to be beloved by everyone in Hollywood, and in both political parties, and so the same thing happened to him. But sometimes it takes that person who has seen how ugly things are to speak out against it.
That's a really good point, is to walk past the things that we've had to walk through and use that to do good going into the future. I think it's wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I was very excited to talk to you today. And,
me too. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful conversations that we've had at the past, and I'm sure we're going to have many more of them. And I really like your perspective on things. Sometimes, to get to know each other on camera is a little different than standing around and just talking about everything, but I would love to hear some more of your perspectives on things. And I think everybody else would too, because you have had so many different experiences, and there's a reason why you were chosen to do Tucker's biography. So, I'm pretty sure that we could probably explore that a little bit too. And that's wonderful. So thank you so much for coming on today. Have a great day, and always good to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Let's do it again soon.
Awesome. We'll be right back in 30 seconds, and have a great day, Chadwick. We'll be back with Bob Cushman. Good morning and welcome to the third hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 18th day of December 2024, and I'm waiting for Bob to get on. And in the meantime, I've got Ralph, and we're gonna launch into some subjects here while we're waiting for Bob. What's happening today, Ralph?
Oh, just kind of trying to get keep everybody's equipment running. You know,
There you go. Yeah. It was an interesting talk this morning at 9.
Yeah, I think that's, like I said earlier, there's a lot of people, and I deal with this quite a bit with talking to people, that they don't believe that the kind of evil is out there that is out there, and they think that everything is all just puppies and kittens and roses and stuff, and none of that stuff actually exists. And it most certainly does.
Yeah, it's really shocking when you see what people are capable of. And I think that, hurting people hurt other people. I don't even know if they know better, some of them.
Yeah, and I think the point that Chris was getting at in that too is one of the intentions, at least, that I kind of detected out of what Chris was saying, was more along the lines of, if you are in a situation like that, get out, get out of it, and look critically at what's going on and take action against the evil. Mm-hmm. And that, even if you do consider yourself a victim of that, you do need to do something about it.
Yeah, you can't just sit there and let it go. That's not okay. And I think that's a great point to make, no matter what. And then actually, it's a very good segue to Bob. Bob Cushman is going to be on. And quite honestly, I got to tell you, we had a conversation this morning, and there are not many people that I have a overabundance of respect for in the political realm. I really don't, because I've seen too much and I've been involved in it too much to be able to like we talked before with the Satanists that were on, the Satanist thing that was on Monday that I took down. There's a lot of people that parade as what they are not. Bob called me this morning and ran something past me, which was, I got to tell you, I have so much respect for him, for the fact that he approached an issue in a very professional, wonderful, and gracious manner. And I just have a ton of respect for the man for it. I really do. And it tells me his character will carry through his other pursuits, which I find to be critical in anything that we do in life, is that we have to be the same no matter what day it is, no matter what we're doing. It needs to be consistent. So I just very much value what he's come, because I watched his work over the years and never met him, never talked to him, but decided that I would reach out to him, and I did, and he got back to me, and that's been a real positive thing. So I'm gonna bring Bob on right now, and then Ralph, I'm going to send you back for a while, but thanks for jumping on a minute, and we're going to go to talk to Bob a minute, okay?
Yep. See ya.
Thanks. Bye. Morning, Bob. How you doing?
Good morning, Donna. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm actually doing very well. I'm still looking for that email to come through, the newest one.
You should have it. I just sent them a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, it might just take it a minute to come through here. So when I'm online, I'm using up all my computing power. So sometimes that's a little dogged, but let's start out by, you sent me this, and we've been talking since the last time that you were on. This was the latest.
Right.
It was one of the copies. And I honestly believe this is probably one of the most important stories that's going to come out in this coming year in regards to Michigan. I really do. It's extraordinary.
If there's one thing that I think we can always remember, and that is some wise, sage advice from several years ago, was illuminated in some political movie several years back, is follow the money. And I've been doing that for several years now. And once in a while I come across something which just jumps out at me. And the thing that we've been discussing the last couple of days, and I had formerly agreed to sit on it, but I now feel that that's something I can no longer sit on, is discovering that Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, who we'll see has been very, what's the word?
Manipulative
In pursuing lawfare on Republicans, very one-sided, that she and her wife are both connected with some nonprofits that have donated $1 million to a company whose owners are currently under prosecution. And this is very close to you because you're one of the victims. As you know, back in 2022, there were 5 gubernatorial candidates for the Republican slate in the Republican primary that were thrown off the ballot because of a massive signature fraud. And now we have some hard evidence and some soft evidence that perhaps Nessel was connected somehow, because she and her nonprofits donated $1 million to the company whose owners are now currently under prosecution. And did you ever get the slideshow, or if not, can you enable me to bring up my slide?
Yeah, if you just go there, I will take this down. I'm going to let you do it then. And
Okay.
then if you go ahead and put your go to present and then window, I have it, and then put up the window, and then we can click through that, because that's where we were last
I've got
time.
present, and every time I go up to slides and PDF, it goes away.
Just go to
Maybe I have
window.
to share screen.
Yeah,
Have you enabled my share screen?
Yeah, you can do it. You go into present,
Yep.
and then it'll say share screen, and then go under window, and then choose the window that you want to share.
For some reason, it's maybe I'm not quick enough. Have to do within half a second. That's still not working.
Yeah, it goes present, then share window, and then
I
you
see
should
the
be able-
pathway. It's just not working for some reason.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, you're unable to do that. Let me see if I can bring it up here. And
I'm
then-
wondering if there's something on your side that you have to enable.
No, really, there isn't. I've done this a lot. So let me see what I've got
Check
here.
your email and see if you got it. You should have it.
I'll see, because I know I have your document up. Oh, and we'll have to see what's happening here. So hang on just a minute. Give us just a minute, and we'll be right back with the information that you really need to see. Okay, let's see. Can you try it again? Because I'm pretty sure that I'm looking for the document. Hang on a minute. It's just going to take me just a minute. If you want to start talking about it, I will continue to search.
Okay. I'll let you work on it from your end. We've already indicated that we just discovered that there's a pair of nonprofits that are connected with AG Nessel and her wife, and that this nonprofit has been shown 2 ways, I should mention, both through the mi.gov and through the IRS 990 forms. We see that the nonprofit has donated just over $1 million to the company that was run by Sean Wilmoth, Jamie Lynn Wilmoth, and Willie Reed. And those 3 are currently in the midst of being prosecuted. And it just seems more than just coincidental that here's Dana Nessel, who ironically was involved in the prosecution of these 3 people, but her nonprofit had donated to these 3 people ostensibly for obtaining signatures in 2020. And of course, the act of fraud took place, as we know it, in 2022. So let's just recap what we do know. We know that the crime was committed in 2022. We know that the accused were charged in 2023. We know that the accused were bound over for trial in June of 2024. And here we are, just a few days left in 2024, and the trial has yet to actually begin. Now, there is a judicial procedure that is scheduled. I want to say it's the 13th or so of January, so mid-January.
Yeah.
Yet these three individuals are walking free, and it just seems awfully strange that this is being slow walked, and you have to wonder if this $1 million was a payoff in some form for the slow walking of this alleged prosecution.
It sure seems like it's going so absurdly long, and things have been put off. And then not only that, but the attorney that I had hired asked me to sign a tolling agreement to end the case and then refile it later. Well, I found out under the advice of that we don't want to run the clock out. Well, I've got 6 years for that clock to run out. So why would they want me to sign a tolling agreement and end it right now, saying that it does not? There's some weird stuff here, guys, that doesn't make sense. None of it is making sense at all. And I'm thinking that I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to think about it right now, other than the fact that we need to maybe do an actual investigation and get to the bottom of this.
Now, as a side note, because we're having trouble with this live presentation, I just want to present the fact that as soon as we're done with this interview, that I intend to put all the facts through Twitter. And I'll also attempt through Facebook, but as you know, we're still severely censored on Facebook. And the stuff that we're not able to show online right now for technical difficulties will be there within the hour online. And I think one of the things that we have to consider is for probably several reasons, if you are the defendants in this criminal prosecution, if the Attorney General is slow walking or putting her fingers on the scale one way or another, that if you're the defendants and if you're their attorneys, you've got to be extremely concerned. And I think that because the Attorney General so far has chosen not to recuse herself from this because of her involvement of $1 million, that could be grounds for flipping a guilty verdict. I would think, I'm not an attorney, but that just seems logical, that if you could show that the prosecutor was not forthcoming, that you could overturn a conviction. Could that be part of their scheme? Who knows? I mean, maybe it's reaching, but maybe it's not.
I don't know, but all I can tell you right now is that it just really seems like it is messed up, and I mean messed up bad. Hang on one second, and I'm trying to get this in here. Let's see. 1059 has the PowerPoint. So for some reason, this is not coming through, but I'm going to resend this again because I've got it on my phone, but I don't have it. If you can bear with me just a minute, I will absolutely get this over to where it needs to go. There he goes, one, and that's the PowerPoint. And this is the corrupt signature report. Oh, it does not want to cooperate. I can tell you that right now. So, you know, a lot of times when I see that, sometimes I kind of wonder if we're being blocked, you know. I think this is important to continue on, though. No, it's rejecting the sending of it, which is really weird. All right. So I've got somebody coming in with TeamViewer here to try to get this thing figured out on why it's not triggering, because there's literally a break in the email. I've got it on my phone, but I can't get it on the computer. So we're going to see if we can get this thing figured out, because it looks to me like somebody doesn't want this thing to go. So hang on just a minute, and I'm glad you're here. I'm really wanting to see to bring this forward, because I do think this is probably one of the biggest bits of news that's going to come out this year. I really do. So we're almost there. Okay, we've got it right there. I got it. Hang on. Now, what do you want me to show? Do you want me to show the PowerPoint, or do you want me to show the report?
Let's show the PowerPoint.
Okay. I'm lucky to have backup that can jump on real quick if I get in trouble when I'm online. So it's really difficult, because I run 4 to 5 different screens all the time while I'm on here. So it doesn't always behave exactly the way that I want it to.
Well, I've got 2 screens showing for my own personal purposes on this computer, and I kind of wondered if that interferes with the software logic of your software.
Okay, just a minute, and let me pull up this. It shouldn't. It really shouldn't, but I don't understand why it's doing what it's doing, because last time it did just great. Came out, it was wonderful.
Right.
All right, let me see what's going on here. Wow, this is just crazy. Somebody doesn't want this out. That's all I can say.
Well, perhaps we can just talk our way through it.
We're just gonna do that a minute. Hang on. Well, let's see if this'll. I closed some other things, so let's see if this will work. Aha.
There's a little caveat.
I get it up there, and it. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. Hold on a minute. Now it's really screwed up. Now I can't even see the screen. Ralph, jump on here a minute and see what's going on here, please, because I can't. All right, well, hang on a minute. I'm really sorry, everybody. This has absolutely never happened before, so I'm not quite sure what is going on. I have somebody jump on here on TeamViewer, because honestly, this has locked up my screen. It's literally locked the screen up. So either jump up here, please, and or to help or something. Hang on a second, I'll be right there. Somebody doesn't want this out. Cancel. You want to hit the cancel. Okay, let's see what's happening here. That's what's happened every time. So I don't know how to escape it. All right, hang on a minute. Let me see what's going on here. I have no idea what's happening. Okay, slideshow. Let's see if we can make this work. Aha. Nope. I cannot believe that this is happening. Okay, I've got help here. Hang on a minute. All right, I'm going to try one more. I'm going to try one more time here. Let's see if we can get this up. This is crazy. I have literally never had this happen. So let's see if we can get it up. You can't get the present working, and I can't get it working either. So I can assume that somebody is messing with us. We're going to do it this way and see if this works. Now let's see if I can. There. We're going to have to do it. I prefer to do it full screen, but it's not allowing me to do it. And all kinds of weird stuff's happening. So we're going to do it this way and try to make it work. How's that?
All right.
Okay. I got to see how I move it forward. This has literally never happened. I don't even know what to say right now. Hang on one more time. I'm going to try something.
Well, if you can skip down to a slide where you show Dana Nessel and her wife in a picture, we can start there and continue.
Okay, hang on one second. We'll see why this is not coming across. Bob, this is nuts. I don't know why. I don't know why it's broken, but it is. But we're gonna can you give me just a second here, because I do find that this is really important.
All right.
Okay, I think we got it up to something that will actually work. Let me see what I can do here. And this is what persistence looks like, people. And live. That is over here. And let's try it. Whammo. Got it. Okay, I think we're there, guys. Thanks for bearing with me a minute, because this was absolutely not wanting to work at all. So, okay, so let's go down from here. Which slide do you want to go to?
Why don't you go down to the one that shows a picture of Dana Nessel and her wife?
Okay. Okay, there we go.
And one of the reasons I inserted this one is because it's just another evidence that both Dana Nessel and her wife are either working as chairs, co-chairs with these two nonprofits that seem to be working close together. Next slide, please. Now, this is a note. And first of all, I should say that nonprofits, if they exceed a certain dollar value, I want to say in excess of $50,000, are required to file a IRS form known as the 990. And the 990 is very useful to those of us that research dark money, because at least it's a partial picture of where money is going. And when it comes to nonprofits, there have been some what I consider very, very bad rulings that allow nonprofits to collect money from entities and keep the names and identities of the entities secret. However, if the dollar value of the outgoing money, they usually call them grants, is over a certain value, then they're required to file these 990s. And I've gotten some really good information that otherwise would be dark money by digging through all kinds of information on these IRS 990s. In this case, this is a note from an IRS 990 that was filed under one of these nonprofits, is that the Fair Michigan Justice Project is a collaboration between Fair Michigan and Wayne County, Michigan Prosecutor's Office. I don't even know if that's legal. It shouldn't be, I don't think, which focuses on capital offenses committed against members of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
Now,
So why does this have anything to do with the signature gatherers and picking Republican candidates is where I'm going with this next, but go ahead.
My gut, and once again, I've never been through law school, but my gut tells me that this kind of collaboration between a nonprofit and Wayne County Prosecutor's Office is possibly, maybe should be illegal. And this is another example of why I think Dana Nessel probably should have recused herself from this whole process. Because what do they say on all these TV court shows? You know, it's fruit from the tainted tree. Well, obviously, with this kind of collusion between an attorney general giving $1 million to a company that fraudulently obtained signatures, and then in the background, this collaboration between the Fair Michigan Justice Project and the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, it just sounds like collaboration that would require at a bare minimum recusal from the case. Wouldn't you think?
Well, I would say it's prosecution. It's prosecutable because if she gave money to this, you said it perfectly. She gave money to the signature gatherers who fraudulently collected signatures and removed 5 candidates from the governor's race off the ballot in 2022. There is a direct line, and the direct line is through Michigan Fair Foundation and the Fair Michigan Justice Project in collaboration with Fair Michigan and Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, which she actually worked for. How long did she work for the prosecutor's
11
office?
years. She was an assistant prosecutor for 11 years. That's right.
I hate to say it, but I'm going to come right out and say it. It just sounds like and I think it needs to be investigated. She literally paid the signature gatherers and had an effect on the 2020 election. And it goes right to Dana Nessel. It goes through these NGOs. We've all been looking for this stuff forever, but this literally goes through all of the NGOs in the state of Michigan, these two specifically, that they used in order to funnel money. And
it certainly appears that way. Can we go to the next slide?
Absolutely. This is awesome.
Now, this is just another piece of evidence. And if you've read much of my research, you know that to the best of my ability, I always try and back up my research with evidence so that I don't have to keep going back and forth. And this is another evidence of Dana Nessel's connection with the Fair Michigan Foundation.
Is this current or is this past?
Well, this particular screen happened after I did a search and I went to michigan.gov, and they have a business entity search place you can go to. And when I did a search on her names, I came up with these 3 items, but the only one that's relevant to this discussion is that it shows that she is or was president of the Fair Michigan Foundation.
This is really shocking.
Next screen, please. Once again, for at least 2, if not more reasons, it just seems incredible to me that Dana Nessel did not recuse herself from this entire process.
It would seem, yes, because it's like it is possible that the $1 million payment for free, fair and equal Michigan to First Choice Contracting was a payment purposely intended to cause bad actors to tank Republican candidates for the office of Michigan governor. It looks bad, doesn't it?
It looks real bad. You know, usually when people in business or governments make decisions, they use language like to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And this entire process, at the very best, presents an appearance of serious impropriety.
And then you have to ask the question, why is it taking so long to get this criminal case dealt with? Well, I have a civil case out there, and every time I've been asked to either go to the Attorney General's office or anything else, they want to know what's happening with that civil case. They don't even ask the question about the criminal case, and that's the one that they're involved in. So why are they so scared of the civil case? And why are they slow walking the criminal case is my question.
Well, to your very point, apparently what you and others have been told is that you can't pursue a civil case until any relevant criminal case is put to bed. And that would be another reason to drag your feet, wouldn't it?
Sure seems to be. That's what I've been told, is that we had to wait until the criminal case was done, and that stepped in front of it. So they wanted to know what happened with the civil case, and that's what they keep asking me. Maybe that was bad information that I received also. I don't know, but that would be bad counsel if it was, and I can name the people involved in that. But that's absolutely bad counsel if that's not true, and they're slow walking the criminal case. There's no two ways about it. They're slow walking this thing. It's 2.5 years. They know what's going on. There's no two ways about it, that it took 2.5 years to get any sort of conviction. They tried to throw me up on the stand at one of the hearings, and the question came up again: what's happening with the civil case? Now, why would they have put that into a criminal case? Why would they base a criminal case on what's happening with another case, which is a civil case? Why did they hold their breaths for that answer? I want to know. It should be unrelated.
If I were you, I would want to know too.
I want to know why they kept asking me that question.
Now, if we could take a look at the slide you were just on, but we'll go forward. You know that I'm an engineer, and you know that I look for pattern recognition, and I try and connect the dots based on what makes sense. And I've come up with several examples of how I believe that Dana Nessel has a real serious history of committing lawfare against Republicans. And the first one that I sort of became involved with on a somewhat related basis was how Dana Nessel basically began attacking the people that place children in various or adoption agencies. And she tried to connect the so-called separation of state, and she tried to use that as an excuse to stop the state from helping subsidize Christian homes and Christian adoption agencies, because typically people who are of faith do not think that marriage should be between two people of the same sex. So when it comes to adopting children, they believe, and I happen to agree with them, that if you're going to allow a child to be adopted, it should be into a normal Christian home with a man and a woman as the so-called marriage. And she fought that very voraciously. And I noticed that a federal judge in 2019 had ruled that faith-based adoption agencies contracting with the state can refuse to place children in LGBTQ homes. And of course, that drove Dana Nessel kind of crazy, I guess. So the next slide, please. Well, we all know about the GBI strategy cover-up, and I just think this is a severe example of how we're being lied to by our government. In this case, it was Dana Nessel, and she colluded with the FBI. And it wasn't until a year or two later after the fact that this investigation came to light. And even though a lot of people have tried, we're still not getting any kind of information from either the Attorney General of Michigan's office or the FBI. And this is huge. It's absolutely huge, because this is just another indication and proof of the fraudulent, and I can't say that word loudly enough, fraudulent election in 2020. So here's another case where she is working and using lawfare, or lack thereof, to perform cover-ups against the Republicans that she so willingly detests. Next slide, please.
The signature gathering destroyed destroyed lives in so many ways people can't even understand. Not only was it expensive to fight this fraudulent nonsense, we were absolutely, by what happened with the way that the state handled it, as well as the signature gatherers, who sure looks to me like this, if there was that much payment there, that there was an influence of some sort. I'm real concerned. Okay, go ahead.
The next slide.
Can we go to this one in 2020?
Yeah, that one, yes.
And her wife, Alana McGuire, as leaders of the interrelated nonprofits Fair and Equal Michigan and Fair Michigan Foundation, donated over $1 million to the very company that knowingly committed fraud that tanked the gubernatorial campaigns of 5 Republican candidates by knowingly submitting fraudulent signatures. Michigan entrepreneur Donna Brandenburg, former Detroit Police Chief James Craig, and 3 other Republicans were denied their right to run for governor in the 2020 primary elections.
I don't know how I can say it any differently.
Pretty straight and to the point. And the fact that you put knowingly submitted, this is just crazy. Do you want me to keep going?
Apparently, I didn't do a good job with this one, but I was in a hurry.
Oh, that's okay. I thank you for.
I'll just read this. In 2023, years after the fact, vindictive AG Nessel charged 16 Michiganders for their role in acting as alternate electors in the 2020 presidential election. 15 of the 16 cases are still active, with one defendant's case was dropped for so-called cooperating. In a recent discussion with one of the defendants, and that was just this morning actually, this defendant feels that fairly confident that the case will be dismissed, and for 2 reasons. One is there is a very definite precedent for having alternate electors in presidential elections, one of which happened in the Kennedy-Nixon race back in 1960. And as I recall, I'm speaking from memory, it involved the state of Hawaii. And that was a successful system whereby the alternate electors, when they went back and did a recount and took a real hard look at it, they realized that the Democrats had actually won. So it just seems ironic that here is a Democrat attorney general suing for something the Democrats did in 1960, and apparently it worked, and they were correct to have this alternate group of electors. And the second point is probably every bit as strong, if not stronger, than the first point, and that is, in order to convict somebody with this type of law, you have to prove intent. And according to my source, it's already been proven there was no criminal intent. And the person, the 16th person that is no longer being prosecuted testified to that effect. So the person they were hoping would rat on the others turned out helping the others, because he testified there absolutely was no criminal intent here. So, but once again, we see this kind of bait and switch operation using lawfare with Democrats. Look what they're doing with Trump, and how the cases are virtually all falling apart when they finally get to a bona fide court with bona fide jurists that will take a real look at whether or not it's justified.
Let's go back to the beginning and just quickly go through those slides that we skipped over a minute to make sure that everybody understands exactly what happened here.
Okay.
So Nessel pays over $1 million to signature fraud company. Sean Wilmoth, Jamie Lynn Wilmoth, and Willie Reed. That's accurate.
Right.
3 people have been criminally charged with involvement in the signature forgery scheme that spoiled 5 Republican gubernatorial bids in Michigan in 2022, state authorities said Thursday. So I'm not sure what the source was on this, but let's recap. The crime was committed in 2022. The accused were charged in 2020 2023. The accused were bound over for trial June 2024. And with 2025 only a few days away, the trial has yet to happen. I think that my right to a speedy trial or anything has absolutely been sabotaged here.
I would agree.
Here's the return of the 990 for fair and equal Michigan. Doing business.
I brought this up just to show that what the form looks like at the top. It's a length. Usually it's could be anywhere from 18 to 35 pages long. They all vary in length. They're quite long. And but here you can see that the name of the organization is Fair and Equal Michigan. And you can see that it is a 501c4. See, most of the way down where the 501c4 box is checked, that indicates it's a nonprofit. And 501c3s, 501c4s, and other kinds of nonprofits, and there are several more, unfortunately, it's been ruled that the source of the money is not something that has to be exposed to the public, which I totally disagree with.
Well, and look at this. So I want to know, isn't a 501c4 supposed to be for education? Why
Yes.
were they giving money to the signature gatherers? There's the question right there.
That is a whole nother line that could and should be pursued, is the fact that it seems to me that most of these 501c4s are being actuated in a fraudulent manner because they're breaking the rules of what a 501c4 is supposed to do and what it's restricted not to do.
Yeah, clearly. And here we go. So now here's another one that I'm really concerned of, because we've got K2K Consulting, which we have, through Jonathan Cagle, made some crazy connections with. And I'm going to have Jonathan on. We're going to look at this. They're paying for canvassing services. $1,478,000, and First Choice Contracting $1,478,000, and then First Choice is being paid $1,072,000.
Right. And that number, by the way, I was gratified to see that when you go to mi.gov and you look for expenses that were paid to First Choice Contracting LLC, it exactly agrees with that number. So this is a source that comes from the IRS federal government, and another source that comes from Michigan that is supposed to collect all this data. They agree. So that made me feel confident that this is a good number.
I want to talk about the K2K Consulting, because that's another thing that everyone should be really concerned of. Oh man, look at it. And they did it in lots of different batches.
Yeah, this information comes from the state of Michigan. But it, as I said, that $1,072,000 totally agrees with the number from the IRS.
Could this have come through here because they were pushing other signatures or other agendas?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
So, I mean, was this a direct attack against the gubernatorial candidates, do you think, or were they also behind other petitions for funding them to be funding the effort to gather signatures? And can they even do that under the 501c4 rules?
That's a whole nother line that probably should be pursued, but I wouldn't even attempt to do it in this vein.
All I can say is that this whole thing stinks.
Well, I totally agree.
The entire thing absolutely stinks, and there needs to be a serious investigation into the connections between Dana Nessel and First Choice Contracting.
I am looking forward to what happens going forward.
She was sitting there.
I know, with talking with you, and I can assume that the other four gubernatorial candidates are torn up about what happened and are angry and miffed. And I can only imagine the amount of money as well as emotion that went in from all five of you when you were running for office.
we put a lot of time. I'm unlike the other candidates. I actually funded mine, but the time and the money and effort to try to do the right thing, there was a ton of time and money and effort that was put into it. And did it be, happily as a way to help restore the nation. And to think about it in the fact that Nessel was sitting there as the Attorney General, and her wife was now the new president of the board of these organizations, and shuffled monies to the signature gatherers that way. I'm very concerned. I don't even know if any of this was legal, but the connection is there, and the connection is there with GBI Strategies. And Nessel throwing up her eyes. I don't know what they did. I passed it off to the FBI or their police. Are you kidding me? That doesn't absolve her for making sure that things were done correctly just because she said she passed it on. That's not okay. The buck still stops there with her.
If you were to look at all the things that she wrote after she passed it off to the FBI and all the interviews that she gave, I'm certain that she just echoed everything that liar Jocelyn Benson said about this being an absolutely fair election in 2020. And she knew better. She knew better.
Defending Benson. She was the one that was defending Benson. How in the world do you have two people that are working together? You've got these kind of connections between Nessel and the money and the signatures and all these other things coming forward, and look at that and say that there wasn't any criminal intent or collusion. Maybe I'm just way too much common sense here, but as somebody would have to go a long, long ways. Even in any corporation, you have to have degrees of separation. You can't just do whatever you want to do. Or as Jonathan Breitbart, who was in charge of Eric, the voter rolls, it's like, and then sit there and say, oh, there was separation. No, there wasn't. There was zero separation. There's been zero attempt to settle this thing and get any type of conviction on the signature gatherers. It's been slow walk to stall it out. I get handed something from an attorney that says, I need you to sign this tolling agreement to put it on pause and basically stop the lawsuit, and we'll sign it later. And because we're running that's what that was told to me, because they're just running the clock. He didn't say they're running the clock out, but we've got a statute of limitations coming up. I talked to another attorney. That other attorney, who was not attached, said, you got 6 years. So I don't understand this, which I don't understand either. And he said, if you kill this lawsuit, guaranteed it'll be impossible to start it back up again. I hope everybody out there understands the severity of what we're looking at here. And
you kind of echoed in a very general way my feelings over the last 4 or 5 years of everything that I've uncovered, not just in following the money, but the election fraud that I personally observed at both the primary and the general election in Detroit at the Detroit Absentee Voter Counting Board, and my shock and my chagrin at the way it was ignored, not only by the Democrats, but also by most of the Republicans, right up to, at that time, Ronna Romney was running the RNC, and Laura Cox was running the MRP. And when I discovered this fraud, even before I created my affidavits, I sent emails to those two, plus several other attorneys that I thought would be instrumental in fixing things. And when nothing ever happened, I can't begin to explain my frustration.
I think,
well, perhaps you know, but
I think I know, Bob. I actually think I know. And I believe that the whole state is feeling that. The entire state is feeling betrayal by Whitmer, Benson, and Nessel, all three of them. The entire state is not buying their crap because we know something was terribly wrong. And now when we bring forward this, that there was a $1 million payment to the signature gathering company, which tanked the gubernatorial run for 5 of us. And I got to tell you, and I'm just going to put it out there because I talked to the special investigators to the Attorney General's office, and this was what was told to me. And this is an affidavit. You can consider this an affidavit. I was told that they had signed affidavits from the signature gatherers that were told to do things exactly the way they were doing by Sean Wilmoth. I was told that flat out. And all of a sudden he was removed and another guy came in and said, no, we never had anything like that. I'm like, you lying bastard.
Have you attempted, if I may, have you attempted to FOIA this information?
No, I haven't.
It sounds like something you'd want to have in your hip pocket.
Mm-hmm.
The affidavits that you're describing.
Well, it looks to me like they destroyed evidence. Because I was told by somebody in the Attorney General's office that they never had it, when I was told by the person before that they did have it. So somebody's lying, and somebody's doing a lot of lying here, and I'm not buying it. And so, and I did face off with that person in a meeting, and he was almost on the verge of tears when he got done with my little behind chewing session that he had. But they've got themselves so entrenched in this stuff that the average person doesn't even. And I mean, this is something that we need to talk about. Jonathan Breitbart, that whole nonsense, lost 10,000 of my signatures. That never came out until I sued in Supreme Court of Michigan, and all of a sudden he magically finds it and writes the most absurd, childish recount of I directed my people in my department to go look for them. And we looked in the office where we kept the signatures and there was nothing there. So I said, look further. And they went to another place in the department. And lo and behold, under a counter in the back, they found the 10,000 missing signatures, which he categorically, outside of any proper protocol, decided that they were all fraudulent and didn't make any difference. This whole group of people is hiding everything in the 2020 and 2021 or 2022 election. I'll guarantee you. And to see the money flow like this is just, is just reprehensible.
Any logical knowing person who's listening to the discussion, I'm sure that their first knee-jerk reaction would be, well, take it to court. But those of us who have been involved in the judicial system of Michigan, and those of us, and in my case, I've had two or more, depending upon how you count them, 2 or more successful adjudications against Jocelyn Benson, only to see her continue to take it up and up and up the power chain up to the Supreme Court. And when you have a crooked, and we do, when you have a crooked Supreme Court in a state, you are just screwed, because they've got what seems like an endless supply of money for judicial things, adjudication. And if they take it up high enough and the top court is crooked, I don't know how you can win. Except
you can't, because there's the boss right there.
Public opinion.
There's the boss right there.
Well, she's the top cop, but she's not the top lawyer or top judge.
Top judge, but I mean, she literally was defending Benson. So when you start looking at the conflict of interest of all of these people to hide the stuff that needed to be addressed. If she was doing her job, she would have said, let's investigate this. Not a peep, not a peep. She did say that none of us were guilty of any wrongdoing there, but honey, you didn't go far enough. Let's start looking at the people who were guilty and find out who paid these people to do what they did. Why did they get paid the amount of money that they did? And if we were paying for, if I was paying for signatures and everybody else was paying for signatures, and it started at a low level, and then it got into almost a coercion is not the word I'm looking at, but they were going to stop because they didn't get enough money. And so they kept raising the price on the signatures, or else we just weren't going to have enough. And so they got us far enough along in the process that they basically held us hostage the rest of the way. It was hostage holding that was going on there. And she apparently was paying for it through this 501c4, which I don't even know if that's legal. How in the world can a 501c4 pay for signatures?
I would like to think if and when this comes to a lawsuit and a court, that they could force the 501c4 to reveal the sources of the money. Because obviously this didn't come from Dana Nessel's pocket, but she was the administrator of, if I can use that term, the administrator of this 501c4, she and her wife. And so you can bet your bottom dollar they know where the money came from. And I would love to see a court force the expulsion of this. And I would think that there's some merit for forcing a 501c4 to reveal its sources when there is bona fide fraud happening.
I can't agree with you more. How absolutely shocking this is. You want to do a quick paraphrase of this entire situation? So I've got a nice sound bite here. Can you do a great paraphrase of the situation that happened?
With what we're talking about today, we discovered just within the last week or so that Dana Nessel and her wife, Alana, have been running nonprofits, 501c4s, that have paid just over $1 million to a company that was operated by 3 individuals that are now currently up for prosecution for intentional signature fraud, which tanked 5 Republican gubernatorial candidates as they were running in the primary. And this is something that absolutely needs to be investigated. And one of the absolute incredible things from my standpoint is that the fraud happened in 2022. And we're going into 2025, and the persons that perpetrated this fraud, allegedly, I guess you should say, are still walking around free. And it seems apparent that the prosecutors involved, which I think involves Dana Nessel, have been slow walking this whole process. And according to you and others, you can't bring a civil lawsuit when there is a relevant criminal lawsuit that's taking place. Perhaps that's the reason it's being slow walked.
Perhaps. And what was really strange is I filed my civil case, and then all of a sudden they filed a criminal case in order to, in my opinion, stall it out. And every time I've gotten in touch with them, they ask me, has the civil case been resolved? They want to know if the civil case, if there's been any resolution to the civil case. And I'm like, what does this have to do with the criminal case? Why are you asking me this about a civil case when you can't even resolve the criminal case? It's unbelievable to me.
I would just, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of O.J. Simpson. Here's a case where a guy was charged with murder, and he escaped the criminal case, but was convicted on the civil case. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Are you old enough to remember that?
Yeah, I am. I'm not that much younger than you, Bob. Hate to tell you that. So, but of course, you know, and I think this is something that we are going to have to come to terms with in the state of Michigan, that our state is at war against free and fair elections. Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and Gretchen Whitmer. I filed a pro se case that was about what they did in order to subvert the election through NGOs. That's going to be an open and closed one. I pulled it, and I'm going to put it back up on the docket at some point in time. But I really think that we need to go after this with lawfare and prosecute these people to the fullest extent of the law, or say, you know, hang our upside down flag for the military to come in here and say, we are in distress. We have got criminals running the state, blatant criminals that are running the state, GBI strategies, the election. And let's see if she finds me $1,000. I hope she does, because I'm going to say, that's great. Let's rumble, honey.
I agree.
Go ahead. Make my day. Go after me. Make my day. It will be an epic choice that you will regret the rest of your life, because the rest of us know what you have done. And some of us are a back down kind of person. I don't have a reverse gear. Hate to tell you that, Dana. So
Well, right now, you and I are doing our job, which at the moment seems to be shining a light on truth and educating people as to what's really going on.
sad, very, very sad, the direction this nation has gone into. But we certainly have to look into it when we see that amount of money poured into fraudulent signature gatherers who knowingly committed the crime. There was no accident there. They did it in order to. And the other question I have, which I think needs to be asked, but I'm going to ask it, is how come Tudor Dixon had an error on every single one of her petitions and they let that slide? She should have also been disqualified for the date error on it. No, they let her slide because she was their little darling that the DeVosses wanted to fund. And as soon as she won the primary, they jerked their funding. That's the mechanism that you can see. They stopped funding her because she was a designated loser to make sure that Whitmer was in place again. That's a pretty easy one to call. Death of common sense is still alive. I know they'd like to have the common sense die, but that's an easy one to look at. She was the designated loser. And look at the money. Follow the money, as you said. And follow the money here.
Amen.
We're gonna absolutely have to get the money out of our elections, because we will never have a free and fair election if it's all about the money, which is what it's all about right now. It is all about the money, and it's just despicable. I hope everyone right now is sick to their stomach over this. We should be, just absolutely furious about what's gone on, as well as sick to our stomach at the lengths that these people would go to with the registering voters, with all of that stuff. GBI Strategies, Gary Bell was behind 70 NGOs that he registered. This is something that needs to absolutely end.
In my mind, this gets a little complicated, but in my mind, one of the absolute keys to trying to fix Michigan absolutely has to involve going back to a part-time legislature.
Agreed.
People are people. We all make mistakes. And if you've lived long enough, I'm sure that there's some dirt or evidence on everybody to some degree. And we know that, and we've seen this more recently, especially in DC, but I'm sure it exists very much in Michigan, is that people in elected offices are coerced, and I use that word strongly, coerced to do the wrong thing, because if they don't, this dirt, whatever it is, that somebody's hanging over their head is being used over their head. But if you have a part-time legislature, you can get good, successful individuals that do not need to rely upon the salary from the state, in this case, the state of Michigan, to survive. Now, I'd like to think that most of us are good and most of us have good intentions, and we all love our families. And family's got to be number one with anybody with any kind of integrity. If you have that, then if you're in a full-time legislature and somebody holds something over your head, you're likely to do the wrong thing, because your family is most important. In order to continue to support your family, you're going to allow to be coerced, maybe saying, well, that's not too bad, or this won't hurt people for too long. But if you got a part-time legislature, you take most of that ammunition to do wrong away. I don't think most people think it through that far, but I think we need to, because I think that is the solution. Most states have a part-time legislature. The really successful states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, they're all part-time legislatures, and many of them are without income tax. Hello? It's kind of obvious to me.
It is. Well, and if we go back to the Constitution and what the Constitution allows, and we follow the law, which Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, Gretchen Whitmer, and the rest of the cronies out there don't seem to have any regard for the law. I don't see it being followed too well.
So that's an understatement, isn't it?
It is an understatement. I mean, this is a criminal enterprise that they have going on here, all of them. And it doesn't stop there. It goes through the funding of the World Economic Forum in Detroit and the developers that are involved in that. We could tie this whole thing together. I'm pretty sure there are great investigators out there that have, when President Trump said, we have everything, I'm pretty sure he means they have everything. So they know where the money went. They know who was involved in it, probably biding their time until they get every last criminal to round up. And honestly, we're going to be done with this. Justice is coming. And you know what? You and I are both Christians, and God only lets the bad things happen around his children for so long. And as a good father, he's probably about done with this right now. And I'm guessing that it's going to change and change rapidly at some point in time. You know, as a dad, I don't think you would tolerate this for very long.
It's been a battle. Unfortunately, I've got some children that have been brought up in the liberal education system, and that's just a whole other discussion for another day.
That's a good discussion to have. So like, I homeschooled my kids, but that doesn't mean that they all have done the right thing. I've got a couple of them that I'm like, okay, I don't know where this got derailed, but it got derailed along the way somewhere, you know. But I think that all parents can say that. And unfortunately, we're living in a time where the children are the prey, and they're after our minds and our families and our minds, because that's the only way they can control the world for their sick, nasty pursuits of the destruction of human beings. Because we don't matter to them. They'll kill without a backwards glance. They did it during COVID. They've done it in the wars across the world. This isn't the way God wants us to work. He wants us to be able to get past our differences and live together with each other and take care of each other as human beings, not just people we agree with. This isn't the way it's supposed to work. But I digress. Well, thank you for coming on today. And I just got to say, you really honored me by calling this morning and saying this has got to get out, and having that discussion. I have a high regard for you and your ethics. So thank you. Thank you for honoring me with this. I really appreciate that. Would you like to say the prayer today, Bob, or do you want me to?
I think you're much better than I. Go ahead.
I'm not sure about that. I just whatever comes to mind. I don't really plan anything. It just whatever comes to my mind, as I'm sure everybody knows. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for bearing with us during this time. What a time to be alive. And I guess it's a really great time, because we know that you chose us to be here now while there was so much evil going on around us. And it makes it really easy to shine our lights when it's so dark around us. And I ask that you would continue to guide us, strengthen us, that we are, in fact, your body here, and act like the body of Christ here, doing the right thing, bringing love to situations and peace, as well as words that even we could even live at peace with our enemies, not necessarily corruption or pure evil. That can't coexist, and we understand that. We ask that you would confuse the plans of our enemies and those who have done wrong, and bring them around. First and foremost, we ask that you would save them through the blood of Christ as our Lord and Savior, that you would turn them around and that they would seek salvation from you. And second of all, that anyone who has done wrongdoing, that they would come forward and tell the truth, whistleblow, tell the truth of what happened, so that we can right this state and this nation and find a way out of this darkness that we have. This is an incredible amount of evil that has been running things here. And you know what? We're sorry. We allowed you to be kicked out of our schools and our homes, and the prayer stopped and everything else. And we were sorry for if we had any part in this whatsoever, either by active participation or because we didn't speak up quick enough. And we're very sorry. It will never happen again. And we want you to lead this nation. We want you to lead this world. And we're here to follow you in your footsteps, to become more like you every day. And our honesty, our integrity, the things that we're willing to stand for, we want to be like you. We want to learn your ways, because there is nothing good in human beings. You said it clear out. Only when your light is in us are we able to stand in the darkest of times. We're not afraid of that, because you're going to go with us, and we have faith in you that you will never leave us nor abandon us, and that you will equip us to do the right thing and to walk through this life, not of our own strength or our own wisdom or discernment, but because you are walking us through and we're listening to you, and we want to walk through this life with you. Thank you so much for being a friend to us. We want to be a friend to you. We don't regard you as a vending machine of filling all of our wants or desires. We see you as a friend and a father, a mentor, our guide, our savior, our provider, and our banner who goes before us into every single battle. We know that you will never ask us to do something that you don't equip us for. And our faith is not in any outcome. Our faith is in you. Whatever the outcome may be, we will follow you. And we make a commitment to that this day through the blood of Jesus Christ as our Savior, not only throughout eternity, but every single day, every single hour, every single minute that you've chosen to keep us here on this earth. We love you so very much. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So there we go, boys and girls. It's that part of the show. Ding, 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 ding. Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com because I'm the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I'd like to have a discussion with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, about this and the signature nonsense that went on, because I'm sure he probably has a fast track to really know what's going on here. This is just the surface. There's more here for us to figure out. And I'm pretty sure somebody has that information. It's out there. We just have to find it. Or maybe they've already found it. So with that said, everybody, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. It's a choice to do the right thing no matter what. You have to be unwavering in that. And I just got to say thank you, Bob, for all the work that you've done. And you're an unsung hero, just like Peter Berger is. And it's like, I'm just so thankful for all of you heroes that have been working behind the scenes without recognition, tirelessly, and constantly moving the bar to restore this nation.
If I could just put in a 30-second plug or less.
Absolutely.
For anyone who's listening to this and wants to know more information or wants to see the evidence in hard form, you can go to two places, really. One is Twitter or X, and my handle is Bob Cushman 1776. Or you can go to my website, and the information we discussed today, I'll try and have it up by the end of the day, both on Twitter and on my website. My website is simply michiganscorruption.com with an S in the middle. michiganscorruption.com. Thank you.
Okay, hang on, and I'll bring it up a minute because I do think this is important. There's so much information here. You know, you could spend an entire life looking through this and really understanding what Bob's put out here because of how expansive the information is. It's expansive. There's all of these chapters, which are studies in and of themselves of all of these different issues that he's researched and brought to life or brought to light. It's expansive, it's complete, it's well thought out, it's well done. And I just want to thank you for everything you've done. It's amazing. I'm truly honored to be here today with you.
Well, God bless you for coming up with the Brandenburg News Network.
Well, you know, when they try to silence you, you just keep coming back and shove it in their face more because you know that it's the criminals that are trying to stop it. So have a great day, Bob. And I look forward to having you back on again, hopefully very soon.
God bless.
God bless you. So you stay on the line for just a minute.